Hello, everybody. How is it going? Let's turn this music down. Hi, 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 hi. All right. Today's the day, everyone. Very exciting. So, today is the day, guys. I hope you're as excited as I am, because I have been researching this shit like crazy. I have discovered so many things, and I'm excited to share it with you today. And for those of you who aren't aware, which I'm going to be honest, most of you are going to be quadruple dipping by this point. There is drama in the world relating to gambling addiction and scamming. For those of you who don't know, super fast TLDR, Slicker was caught to be, he's basically taken thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars from people. He has wasted it all in his gambling addiction, and he owes many people a lot of money. He has, it's an unpopular guy right now, to say the least. So we're going to be covering that drama, but we're going to be focusing from a very unique lens. For those of you who don't know, I'm a licensed addictions counselor, which means this is something that's actually really in my wheelhouse. Obviously, I'm not giving therapy or anything, but I'd like to think that I'm somewhat informed on the gambling addiction topic. For those of you wondering, I have had clients who are addicted to gambling. It's actually decently common comorbidity, to the point that the treatment center I used to work at, we noticed it was such an issue that we established an entire extra curriculum for people with gambling addiction, because so many of our clients had gambling problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover briefly all of the drama, but you are going to get a review of it from a addiction counselor's perspective. After that, we're going to go into loot boxing. We're going to talk about, holy shit, game companies hate us. They don't care. You know, capitalism is based, but they are engaging in a form of capitalism that is capitalism at its worst, okay? Capitalism can be good or bad. It is a tool. There's a market system, and right now gaming companies are absolutely taking advantage of it. They treat their staff like shit. They pump out shit garbage games, and they don't give a fuck about their consumer. In fact, they try to get as much money as they can from you. So we're going to get into all of that today, and I am going to be reading the chat. So this is going to be interactive. So at any point, if you have questions, I can't guarantee I will answer all of them, but I will try to answer some of them. So if you have questions, if you have thoughts, make sure you at me. I'll try to respond to those that I can. Anything that is obviously in dono, cheers, super chats, those things are obviously, unfortunately, the easiest to attend to and guaranteed to get a response from me. All right. Let's pull up the shit. Okay. We are going to start from the very beginning, okay? Sort of. We're going to start with a video by Soda Poppin' that he released some time ago, actually, before all this drama started popping off. That is extremely relevant to today's conversation. So, let's get that pulled up. I found this. While this is loading in and while we're getting ready to go, just a reminder, it is September this month. That means if you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube, if you give me a they don't dox me on it. They don't remove any of that from me, which is great. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, just so you know, one of the best ways you can support your streamer, if they stream on Twitch at the same time, is to give them your Prime. If you're signed up to Amazon Prime at any time, literally at any time, it's not muted. Don't worry. I have it muted intentionally. I got you. I promise. Did my mic cut out? Okay, well, the mic cutting out is a whole other problem. I'm not sure why that would be happening. Fun, fun, fun. Okay, should I start from the beginning? Yeah, that's the real problem with loot boxes aptitude. It doesn't matter if 95% of the audience hates it, if 5% of them make money, enough money, the companies will do it. Dot indeed. Yes, as I was saying, it is September. If you enjoy the content that I create, if you enjoy any content creators, the best way you can support them, donos, super chats, cheers, and subs. It is September, which means on Twitch. This is the reality, right? I agree. It is unfortunate that it is taking this long, but this is the reality of most mental health issues and addiction, especially. Nobody gives a fuck unless something's trending in the news or it's happened to you personally, right? Nobody cares. Am I back? All right, there we go. We're back. Right. Okay, we're back. All right. We're back. We're back. Hi, everyone. All right. Jacket back on. So, the issue with all of this is that it is unfortunate that it takes controversy to bring this up, but this is why, for example, like we never really talk about mental health issues until like somebody famous kills themselves or something like that, right? It's getting better. We do talk about mental health issues, but almost never in a productive way. And addiction issues, I'm gonna be honest, nobody cares. I've streamed about addiction multiple times, and my views are always the worst when I talk about addiction. So let's talk about how game companies are fucking us all over and creating a pipeline of gambling, okay? Because this is a problem. This is actually a really serious issue. I know I'm being a little bit memey right now, but I'm being serious. All right. So let's go.
Or a friend of mine linked this to me, and I thought I'd read it on stream. Let me see if my cam's on. It is. It's really bright. How do I make this not bright? All right. Twitch's gambling boom is luring gamers into crypto casinos. Yeah, I find this really interesting. I don't know, because it has so much to do with Twitch. I guess it's kind of out of meta and a little bit late. People stop giving a fuck, right? Probably start giving a fuck again soon, I bet. But 3 years ago, okay.
August 7th. Was he right or was he right?
Okay, let's see. Overseas, site brothers with Twitch streamers to gamble with crypto and their fans follow suit. August 4th, 2022, yada yada. Eneric Chabot, I don't know who this is, didn't start gambling until he saw his favorite gamers doing it online. Okay, so they found like someone, okay. 3 years ago, Chabot began regularly watching Felix, XQC, a former professional Overwatch player, as he competed in various video games on Amazon.com. Live streaming site Twitch for audience of 25,000 viewers in 2021. During some of his streams, Lingel started playing something else, online blackjack. It's probably an NPC. Honestly, it probably is. I don't know how they find these people, but at one point, Chabot saw Lingel post a promotional code on his site called stake.com, which bills itself as a leading online crypto casino on Stake and sites like it. Users can exchange money for cryptocurrencies, just telling you what Stake is. Chabot redeemed the offer and dove into the slots seen on Stake. At first, he enjoyed making bets repeatedly for the equivalent of $1. Then things went downhill. I just started losing and losing, Chabot recalled. After a couple of months, Chabot says he drained his life savings of $40,000. Then he took out two $20,000 bank loans and burned through that too. Eventually, he declared bankruptcy. Okay, while his decision was his own, he says watching the Twitch streamers festively gambling on the site gave me a reason to go on Stake. Like I was part of what they were doing. He told Bloomberg in an interview. He's not the only one to go all in. These days, slots in the seventh most popular content category on Twitch, ahead of video game Fortnite. My grandma would be like, oh my God, it's really popular. Above Fortnite. Like, many streamers are paid handsomely to take part in the activity. One popular streamer said he makes much more than $1 million a month as part of his sponsorship with Stake to crypto gamble in front. Okay. I mean, like, there's people with 200 viewers that are driving like cars that are more expensive than mine. That's just to give you an idea. And I've seen them. So much more than $1 million a month as part of sponsorship with Stake to crypto gamble in front of live audiences on Twitch. In May, Lingel said the promotion code he shared on Twitch brought $119 million to Stake. Wait, they interviewed XQC? What? Probably not. I mean, like, he obviously, I mean, I know he does not get this much fucking money, right? That's ridiculous. But, I mean, it says to Stake. So they worded it. I don't know what his cut is. I don't know the details of these gambling deals. But I do know, like I said, I've seen people with 200, 500 viewers, and they live in mansions, and their cars are well over like 300 grand. That's the life they're living, and they have 500 viewers. And so scale it up and see where we're at, right? Stake, which says it operates under a gaming license in whatever the fuck, is one of the top companies pouring sponsorship riches into the Twitch community. The location Stake gives as its registered address is in Caraco appears to be a rundown shack on Google Earth. The company says most of its staff is based in Europe. Crypto gambling is illegal, or crypto gambling illegal in the U.S., although it is permitted in other countries, according to Frank. It's like a Pokemon, an attorney who leads the gaming law group at
Giacomo
Dwayne Morris LLP in Philadelphia, Canada, has been welcoming crypto operators, potentially contributing to why some streamers moved there. I was told that it doesn't actually fucking matter if you live in Canada or not. Like, it doesn't change anything, and it's just what people have said. Like,
yeah, but Canada, fun fact about Canada, we're one of the biggest money launderers in the world. Yes. For some reason, I don't know what precisely is going on in Canada, but it's very common and very easy to launder money in Canada. So that's potentially maybe part of what's going on.
It's just as illegal in Canada.
Not that because that people are not that I'm saying these people are laundering money, but I'm suspecting that probably the same like policies that are allowing money laundering to be easy might be also making it easier for crypto casino people to be involved in Canada. That would be my guess.
Or maybe not even illegal. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Everyone's like, they're moving to Canada, so now like I think it's still like walking the same line it'd be here. There is the internet. I don't know. We're too stupid to know. You need Canada ID, taxes. Does it matter because of Twitch? I will say that I have been told before. So in Texas, it's illegal to smoke weed, right? But I've been told that like if I smoked weed in my room and I live in Texas, that they wouldn't give a fuck, because who are they to argue with me if I say that I caught a plane and flew to California and I have an exact replica of my room that I'm currently in? They're not going to question that. But that's weed. Very different thing. Yes, they are. No. I've been told like that. Who cares? So we're talking about the law. I'm not talking about police. Keep in mind. We're talking about like Twitch. Very different thing. So anyways, because you're not allowed to break the law on stream. Poke just rips bongs off cam. And like I said, Twitch is like, I don't care. Smoke all you want. And if it really comes down to it, just say you're in a copy of your room in California. You flew there this morning. We're not going to like push it any further than that. Oh, okay. Oh, you're not breaking the law? Okay. We're not going to dig any deeper. We don't care. It's weed. Anyways, moving on. Stake, which says it operates under a gaming license and is one of the top companies pouring sponsorship riches into the Twitch community. The location Stake gives, as the treasurer just already read that part. Okay. It is still possible to place bets on Stake from the U.S. using a virtual private network, which disguises the location of the user and cryptocurrency, however. A Stake spokesperson says, looks like they interviewed from some Stake, says it has implemented stringent compliant processes that prevent people from using VPNs from depositing funds in countries where it is not allowed. Stake adds that it uses a number of measures to address at-risk gambling behavior, including free gambling blocking software for its users. Stake takes its regulatory obligations extremely serious and complies with all applicable laws. Gambling may not be a feature on Twitch forever. A Twitch spokesperson says the company is currently in the midst of a deep dive look into gambling behavior on Twitch. Since Lingiel and others included links last year, the company has since decided not to allow sharing links or referral codes for gambling companies, which spokesperson says was done to address scams and other harms associated with questionable gaming sites. We take any potential harm to...
Okay, so we have an idea, okay, right? Gambling on Twitch is a problem. But, like, how big of a problem is it? Well, let's see. Let's look at slots. As a category, no less. An important category, yes. Pools and hot tubs, one important category, just chatting. Slots, also another category. But don't worry, it's not like they want people to gamble or ruin their life. They just, needed to make a space for it. 1,000 viewers. If you click any of these, you'll see people blowing... I'm not surprised that today the slots channel's down. Sometimes when you click into here, 32.2K, right? Viewers. 32,000 viewers. How much is he blowing at a time? Let's see.
Once again, if it was the right decision to go with these games, for the first time ever, chat has been forced to go with another pair of slots that they usually go with.
Bet $1,250.
They chose Sweet Bonanza. It has been a game. It's like this game is like 5 years old. been out there since the beginning. Hand of Anubis, it's good. Let's get it going.
That's what? $5 bets.
Here we go. Good luck, chats, and good
Bet
luck.
$500. Sorry. There's $500 gone.
Oh, thank you for the raid, Hudson.
10 free spins. Okay.
Heard of his name.
You see how it's addicting? He gets 10 free ones. 1.
Thank you for the raid,
That was 2.
Hudson.
Wow,
Hudson.
look how much money he made.
Portuguese.
I mean, in every way, this is appealing. It's exciting. It's bright. There's lots of shit going on. Have you ever just sat at the... Here's the thing. Have you ever been stuck at the Las Vegas airport, okay? And you're just waiting for your layover. And then there's like this one... I remember this. When I was in Las Vegas, we were waiting for our flight, and there was this one lovely old lady that decided to entertain us all by paying slots for the entire time that we were waiting. It's like an hour and a half. She's just going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And honestly, it's hard to look away. It's interesting. It's bright, right? There's constant reinforcement, really small doses of reinforcement, free things, right? It's usually all pixelated, like free spins. You'll earn a couple of extra points. Then like several thousand points equal like $1. It is so seductive. Why is gambling so seductive? So we're going to kind of answer the question of gambling online in a couple of layers. So let's before we get into the science, let's talk a little bit about some of the human factors. So why are we even talking about this? Well, as many of you know, this happened.
Listen. Some of the listen, I don't care the dog pile or game cookie points. It wasn't about that. Okay? Listen, I've borrowed money in the past. Okay, I borrowed money related to gambling and shit like that. Okay, and I kind of know how it feels, right? But it doesn't matter how bad you feel, right? I feel like if there's a way out to like pay these people back, you should take it.
Yep.
Right? Because the way you're gonna feel after.
For those of you who don't know, all of the Twitch royalty, XQC, Hassan, Mizkif, are all involved with the drama as their buddy Slicker has conned over $300,000 off of them, friends, and also Slicker's own viewers, which is why this is trending in the first place.
Afterwards.
And so, of course, as streamers do, they thought, you know what's the best way to have an intervention when your friend is a serious gambling addict? Publicly.
Even if you're not the one who paid them back, even let's say that I
This is
I
XQC,
help,
yeah.
or me and Trent help, because we're kind of like in a business or whatever, right? The feeling of relief you're gonna get will snowball into other.
I know, I understand that, but I don't.
The British voice is Slicker.
The people deserve their money back, 1,000,000%, but I don't deserve this. I feel like it's a way for me to.
I understand. I know how you feel. Like I said, I've been in this position before, and I know how hard it is to take a helping hand, right? But sometimes things are beyond our size and beyond ourselves, and I think you're at that point. And I'm not trying to judge whatever. That's fine, and you don't even have to accept it, right? It's just gonna happen. Just don't fight too hard, you know. After that, you'll feel at least a little bit. And from a small thing that's positive, sometimes things escalate and they snowball into better things, right? And one good thing is lead to another good thing. It's better at least something positive than negative. Because if you have already snowballing things that are negative, it can only get worse until it doesn't get better. But just intake it and it's fine. Don't feel bad for it. Okay.
So I feel like the best thing you could do is honestly make sure that you have everybody that you owe money to, and make sure that we have it all there.
I mean,
so we can fix this. At least Felix and Train can help.
Yeah, man. Bro, I don't know what to say other than, of course, like, you're a savior, not to me, but to, of course, the people, everyone that I owe. Yeah, man. Like, the people that I don't, the people that I owe back, I will. I mean, it's the people on Twitter, and if you can message me on Discord, the people. I'm sorry, that sounds really messed up.
If you could,
I'll go through.
Dude, Slicker, you need to take like a long ass time. I don't know if you need to call somebody, try to get help, and just sort this shit out, man. Because I mean, like you're there's literally Twitter feeds of how many people you owe.
I know.
There's still people tweeting about it, saying how much money you owe, man. It's never.
If you did,
wait, show me the notepad. You said you have a notepad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was in my desktop, but I put it in the folder. Give me one
Like I
sec.
said, it wasn't. I think people say, "Oh, this is impossible, bro." Like, you're just gonna get scammed. These people are dumb. Okay, if you set up something that double confirms, right, that you talk to them, they asked, you asked, and they gave, right, and it confirms from them and from you. That's it. That's done. I don't
Slicker,
talk
can you
about
click
the,
it?
I don't talk about like the ethics of it or what the fuck. I
2021.
don't give a fuck. Okay, listen. As at the end of the day, okay, everybody's mad. Okay, fuck them. Okay, because okay, I'm sorry to say this. Okay, but we don't want you to the things to escalate in a way that's
So I don't have too many major criticisms of Ms. Kiff or XQC. For the most part, they're kind of addressing both pieces, which is you obviously need to get help and the victims need to be repaid, which I think is more or less the most you can ask for from people. Here's the key thing, right? Is people are also attacking Slicker. They're calling him like a monster. And in many ways, he's done really horrific shit. The problem is, as somebody who's an addictions counselor, Slicker is the natural conclusion of addiction when surrounded by tons of money. Like the fact that he is scammed, honestly, if he scammed only $300,000 when he's surrounded by this much money, I'm actually shocked it's not higher. I'm going to be super honest with you. I've had clients who were homeless and they still owed like $250,000 to friends, family, banks, etc. Right? So the fact that he only owes $300,000, I suppose maybe he's not including there his own personal debt. I'd be curious what that all adds up to. But for example, one of my good friends married to a gambling addict. They're divorced now. In total, about $400,000 in the tank. Remortgaged the house. They lost the house. Declared bankruptcy. Were foreclosed. Had multiple loans out to friends. They had loans out to those kind of loan sharky companies like Cash Money who have super high interest rates. They had loans out from just the bank. They had put everything on the line and lost everything. 400K? Oh yeah. And so when people are being it's 300K, I'm like, in the gambling addiction world, that sounds about right, especially based on his situation, right? Typically, the more impoverished you are, typically the less debt we'll see because they have less access to money before they typically have to declare bankruptcy. But for people that, for example, own a home, you'll see people racking up debts $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And the fact that Slicker's surrounded by so much privilege, I guess there's two things. Number one, is it actually only 300K? Because I would expect it to be more based on the amount of money that he had access to. And maybe this doesn't include all of the money that he owns to banks, Cash Money, et cetera, et cetera. So here's what we have to understand when it comes to addiction. There is the addictive behavior that is wrong. And then there's the person who is being driven by the addiction. Have you ever seen those commercials where there's an old grandma or something like that? And she's really persnickety and she's working at a construction site. And she's yelling at everyone and grouching around and aching about her back and she's moving really slowly. And then her friends, the construction workers, toss her a Snickers. And then she takes a bite and then magically turns into a super buff dude who's a normal construction worker. And they're like, hey, Steve, you're not yourself when you're hungry. Addiction is like that times 10, right? When I've had clients, for example, with addiction, even with gambling addiction, because the amount of hiding and sneaking and lying that you have to do to maintain specifically behavioral addictions is huge, right? So with drug addictions, you're going to see major personality changes, but a lot of people will attribute that to the drug. They'll be like, yeah, the personality change is there, their behavior is really deranged, but it makes sense they're on a bunch of drugs. I think in general, when it's something like a behavioral addiction, we have a lot less compassion for the personality changes because we don't really understand. We're like, yeah, but the drugs aren't going on. How is this person so different? There isn't floods of dopamine hitting their brain constantly from their meth addiction. And the issue is that it seems to be the case that behavioral addictions and drug addictions very much so seem to work on the exact same pathway. It's not totally clear why, but they all kind of hijack this reward system. And there are major neurological changes that you see in the brains of people with a gambling addiction. There are major, major neurological changes that happen. And so there's this balance that you have to do in all addiction recovery, which is taking responsibility for the actions and the shitty things that you did in service to your addiction, and also holding space and grace for the person who's afflicted with the addiction. And this is fucking messy, by the way, right? I've had clients who have like kidnapped people, who've assaulted people, who've done horrible things in service of their addiction. The kidnapping was for money so that they could pay off for more drugs. In the case of like a client who's assaulted people, it was beating somebody up because the person owed them money or drugs, right? So all the time in addiction. And this is the issue with people who talk about addiction and know nothing about addiction, is it's really easy to nobilize and beautify like the addict when you never have to deal with them. You'd be like, oh, they just have trauma. And that's true. Most of the time, they do have lots of trauma. You're like, oh, we just like need to have compassion. Like they just have trauma. And that's true. They're mentally ill people who have lots of trauma. They have issues. And it's the cause of a lot of their behavior. But what do you tell the kids that they've abused for years? What do you tell the people that they've stolen from? What do you tell the family who got broken into? What do you tell the people whose car they smashed, right? What do you tell the person that they've assaulted? What do you tell these people? And this is where addiction gets so much more messy, right? If you live with addiction, it is a totally different conversation than watching it from afar. And a lot of times when I see, for example, things like Slicker come up online, it proves to me that our society still doesn't have a fucking clue when it comes to addiction. I think Counterpoint said this, and I don't think anyone has said it better yet, which is he said basically, I would love to address homelessness, addiction, and mental illness, but our society is not ready for the blood, shit, and sweat that is going to be required to help a lot of these people. It's a messy job, and nobody wants to do it, right? This is why, for example, when you're an addiction counselor, the burnout rate is so high. The number one cause of burnout is compassion burnout. It is so common in the addiction field to come across a worker who just can't give a fuck. They kind of hate them. It's hard not to when you watch them stealing money behind their spouse's back. A lot of times they put the second mortgage on the house without their spouse ever knowing about it. They cause bankruptcy. One family I knew, he drained the entire college savings funds for all of their children, and nobody knew about it until the kids tried to go to school. And this is when it all came out. And it turned out that he was again $400,000 to $500,000 in debt. People don't get this. Right? It's ugly. And so when people like hear me talking about like this empathy piece, I'm not asking victims to have empathy, right? I'm not going to go to my client's abused child and be like, you should just understand that your mom was sick. It's like, it doesn't matter. They still failed me. And that's valid. Full stop. But for everyone else, particularly if you're a person who says that you care about mental health, or that you care about substance abuse, or that you care about addiction, that's a different ballgame for you. And you can't hate Slicker if you care about one of these three things. You can't do it. You can hold him accountable for his behavior, you can demand that he repays his victims, but you can't hate him and you can't vilify him. You just can't do it. Or if you're going to do that, don't pretend like you care about these three things. Don't pretend that you actually have compassion for these three things, because compassion from afar, when everything's easy, isn't compassion. It's complacency. It's simple optics. Compassion in the middle of like the blood, sweat, and tears, right? When you've had somebody fuck you over, or you know somebody, more importantly, you're working with somebody who's fucked over multiple people in their lives, and you're looking at this person and they're kind of toxic towards you. Compassion is the person who says, what you're doing is wrong, and I'll be with you there anyways, but I won't put up with your behavior, right? And here's the thing. People hear compassion and they think enabling, right? I don't enable my clients, never, right? I have compassion while also having accountability. And it's a very fine line to walk. And it is clear to me that nobody has a fucking clue how to do this. This is why, for example, we just like wear mental health as armor and weaponry. And we're basically like, I'm not accountable for things. I have mental health issues. And everyone's like, cool, Jan. And it's like, no, that's called enabling. Now, looky who. We saw somebody who's an addiction, who did addictive behaviors. Everyone's like, we're mad at the scamming. I'm like, what do you think he's scamming for? He's not scamming to line his pockets. He's scamming for an addiction. That's what he's doing. He is scamming you in service of his addiction. And if you ask him why he did it, he's not going to be able to tell you why, because he's in the middle of it. All right, sorry. Get off my high horse. Compassion and accountability. You need both of them. Both of them. Both of them. Both of them. They matter. All right, let's get back to this. Right.
It's a little bit too dark. Okay.
Right.
We work backwards from the worst to the best, right? We can't say, oh yeah, but he's feeling really dark, whatever. But what about these guys' money? We have to work our way backwards. The first thing important is that, you're chill and you're safe, and then we, small steps, and you're chilling. You understand?
Right, I agree.
So how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay or what?
I mean, bro, if you're asking me, bro, I mean, it'll be the best thing ever. On my mom's life, it'll be that my whole life after this, exposing and stuff. I was like, I need to find a way to pay these people back. And I knew realistically, if I was going to find a job, I was not going to be able to pay these people.
It's like that list is like 12 people though.
I know. I deleted people that I owed because I had people that I owed, and I deleted them. This is old.
I think getting
these
the big
people
chunk,
I still haven't.
Getting the big chunks out of the way is, I think it'll be like a load of officials. At least it'll get things rolling. But I don't give a fuck. I'm not trying to farm social credits or some shit. I could not give a fuck as long as something decent is created, right? To where I feel like something was achieved that I could have been part of. I'm okay with that, man. But listen, man, there's always a way out, and you can work yourself out of that. Okay, just hang strong. And I gotta get myself to bed, and I gotta go jerk off, bro. It's so fucking bad.
I
appreciate you, man.
Slicker, the thing is, you're lucky, dude. Because the thing is, for most people, there isn't a fucking way out. You know what I mean?
No,
you are one.
No, but that's what I meant. That's
motherfucker.
what I meant. I don't deserve it.
You
Like,
don't.
100%
I mean,
of
bro,
people
you
do
are
deserve it,
lucky.
but I don't. Like,
You
as in, I'm evil for what I did, so I don't deserve an easy way out of this.
I'm not gonna.
Wait, what? Sorry. What's the Twitch meta nowadays? It's been a while. The meta right now is addiction. All right. Thank you for the sub, Cram That Graham. Good name.
I'm not gonna disagree with you. I'm just saying you are lucky.
Isn't Slicker a big streamer himself? Could he actually pay these people back? He gets about 500 viewers, I believe.
Take advantage of how lucky you are, and that someone like
Peacecraft, just so everyone knows, Peacecraft is joking.
XUC and Train will pay for it. You need to sort out how much money, because that list is 12 people, dude. I mean, you have
No. But
you have a list
I
on Santa Claus.
showed you the date on it. The last date was 2021 when I changed it.
Right, but so it's like,
it
how do you
ridiculous how many people I asked after.
Right,
this.
that's the problem. Is how many people do you fucking know? How many people do you realistically think you've asked? Like 100?
I thought, no, I never even thought at that point. I thought, my brain, I never thought of it like that. I never did. I never wanted to think of how much I owed people, because that shit hit me hard. Like, I would just know that I had no future. That's all I knew. I couldn't think of.
Yo.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Look, I do want to say something to everyone out there. The people that obviously are hating on me are the good people. The people that are thriving from this drama and entertaining it, it's not good. That's all I have to say. I'm not in a position to say I'm good. But then you have to realize, if you understand as well and you're the good person, you have to realize and have sympathy for the people that that got fucked by me. Does that make any sense? Does it make
Okay, I'm gonna explain this as well. So another thing that people don't realize, when I'm saying that, when somebody is in the midst of addiction, they are overtaken by it, I really mean it. And what I mean it is in this way. This is basically kind of his cyclical thought pattern. I'm going to borrow some money. First, he's going to spend money. I mean, it starts with him. I should put spend over here, right? Spend. Suppose spend. Yeah. Anyways, you get the idea, right? He spends money. He loses it. He needs to repay. He needs to accrue more money. He needs to both repay people. So it starts with him spending all of his money. And he wants to keep doing the addiction because he's addicted to it. That's just how this shit works, right? There's no idea of stopping. There's not even the word stop when you're in the midst of this, right? So he loses all of the money and he needs to accrue more money. So he borrows money. And he borrows money and loses all of that too. Now he has a double push for money. Number one, he wants money to gamble with. And number two, he knows that he needs to repay. But here's his thought. I'm gambling. I'll borrow money. I'll put in a little bit and then I'll earn it back. It'll be fine. So I can win it. Then he's going to lose it all again. Then he's going to borrow some more. Then he's going to lose it again. He needs to repay. He thinks I can win it for myself. I can win more money for me and repay all of my debts. He borrows a little bit more because if he just gets that extra $2,000, he can win it all back. He's sure of it. He feels, the dice are hot. He can feel it. He feels good. He doesn't win it all back, unsurprisingly, because they often never do. And then the cycle repeats. I mean, this is how this works. And so here's the issue. When you're addicted, it's like you're driving a bus. And you're pretty sure that you're at the wheel. You're pretty sure you're the one steering things. But the deeper you get into addiction, the more and more the person at the wheel isn't you. It's the slave who is in service to the addiction, right? And when I talk to addicts and I use the language of slave to my addiction, almost every one of them go, yes, that is precisely what it feels like. They think that they're driving the bus because they're looking out the front view mirror. The issue is that they've been standing here, bound and gagged the entire time. They're not actually included in the picture. Every single action that they're doing is in service to the drug, right? This is why, for example, you'll hear drug addicts talk about leaving their children home alone so that they can go steal money and go spend it on crack. You'll hear about gambling addicts who go and like do all these things, crazy shit that no one in their right mind would ever do. And here's the important thing. When they're not in the addicted mode, neither would they. That's a really, really big thing here. So that when they're coming out of the addiction, this is one of the biggest causes of relapse. The biggest predictors of relapse is no social network and mental health problems. A really common issue that I've come across with tons of clients that triggers relapse is dealing with the shame of the behaviors that they did in the midst of the addiction. Because in their right mind, they would never, ever do that, right? They would never steal from their family. They would never take away all of their kids' college funds. They know that that's insane, and they realize that it's horrific to do. But the issue with addiction is that your brain doesn't give a fuck because it is a slave to this like dopamine stuff.
This shouldn't be an excitement drama.
No, bro, this is not.
Can you explain what happens when they can't gamble? What is it? Like pain, withdrawing, how bad? Why don't they rob people if it's so overwhelming? Why do they only scam and borrow money? Because robbing people is way harder than scamming and borrowing money, right? The only people who typically rob to serve their addiction Oh, interesting. The slots discussion is still relevant from what I heard. Slicker was more addicted to sports, ponies than slots. I mean, here's the thing. Most gambling addicts tend to do quite a bit of gambling in general, right? So like a lot of gambling addicts I knew, they would be in the casino, but then when they went home, they were like on the slots. They maybe went to like horse tracks, all sorts of things like this. Yeah. People rob when they don't have anyone to scam. Exactly. Robbing is typically the last option, right? When I talk to my clients, even again, I'm going to compare this a lot to drug addiction because I think in general, our society has a pretty good conception of drugs and it actually maps on very, very, very closely to a gambling addict's experience. It's just society kind of sympathizes and understands the drug addict, and we don't really understand the gambling addict, right? So typically what will happen is you're going to start out with somebody who's asking money and borrowing money from their friends. After that, they maybe will start sneaking items from their family's house, bus tickets, little small items that they can sell in exchange for money. So they could go and buy drugs. In the case of buying drugs, for example, typically, depending on who your seller is, you can actually just exchange things like cigarettes, bikes, bus tickets, and like grocery credit cards and stuff with your dealer. Obviously, with gambling, it's a little bit different. So with gambling addicts, you're going to see a lot more borrowing, straight cash. Typically, they're going to come up with ridiculous reasons. So Slicker is like almost a quintessential textbook case of this. If you read some of the stuff that Slicker did, he would say things like, oh my gosh, like the bank has locked me out. I have to book a flight. Like this, that, always a crisis that comes up where they need like $1,500 to $2,000 from people. So that's what's going to start happening. Is first it's going to be just like borrowing, like, hey, sorry, I don't have enough to cover this. Can I borrow like $20? Hey, I can't cover rent this month. Do you mind sending me like $500? And it's going to just escalate because they're going to need more reasons, right? You can't just keep coming back and saying, I can't pay my rent again. So now they're going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like a crazy emergency happened and I don't have access to any of my funds right now. Do you mind just like helping me cover this bill? And then next it's going to be like, hey, super awful. My work hasn't sent my paycheck in like 4 weeks. I don't know what's going on. Do you mind just like floating me a little bit of cash? I'll pay you right back. I promise. Like once I get my paycheck. And it just grows and grows and grows. And the issue is that at some point, people sniff this out and they're like, it feels like I'm not going to get my money back, especially when you don't repay them, right? When you keep not repaying them, most people will close their wallet eventually. The stealing, typically in any form of addiction, comes when basically they have more or less burned every bridge with every relationship. And why, in the right mind, would anyone burn their relationships with every single person that they love? How is that reasonable or rational? It's not. It's because there's an addiction going on. Like there's an actual psychological problem going on that is causing this person to not act reasonably. Right? So by the time we're getting to straight up theft, we're typically looking at like homeless to like either chronically homeless people. For sure, by chronically homeless, we're looking at theft oftentimes. And then temporary homeless people, so people who rotate in and out of housing, will also see some level of theft. That's typically when they've already gone through all the bank loans, they've borrowed from cash money, and basically everyone has shut the door to them. Most people don't want to do crime. Most addicts don't want to do crime. It's just at some point, enough of the normal institution doors get closed. They basically abuse all of the normal, healthy ways to like get help until no one's willing to help them anymore. And then they typically resort to crime, right? And so like that is why Slicker is going to be choosing to scam people and lie to people versus like straight up doing like a B&E and like stealing pocket change. Also, for gambling addicts specifically, they need a lot more money than even drug addicts typically need, right? Like meth is cheap. Gambling, not so cheap. Yes, if you notice, that's at CG4. I've been saying the reason Slicker paid people back like Destiny is because the likelihood that Destiny could be a future source of funds, and ignored paying back people with less money because it's less likely he'd use them in the future. Absolutely. If you look at the people that he's mostly paid back, it's been people like Mizkif, Destiny. He's paid back a lot of people who have a lot of money because they're better sources of money. Is Slicker's next move to rob people IRL? Well, I'm going to hope Slicker's next move at this point is to go to rehab. Get treatment.
I mean, it's not exciting at all.
No, I mean there are people, bro. There are people that live in this shit.
Well, because Slicker, they don't care about any of us. They don't give a shit.
What's
Can
up,
you hear
man?
me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, man. What's up, bro?
Okay.
That is not the only explanation. Some people want to harm others. They are evil. If you think that somebody who's in the midst of an addiction is just doing things to harm people for like sadistic pleasure, you just don't know anything about addiction, right? Sure, there are people who like to harm people, but if there's an addiction going on, you can't say that that's the case. If you've treated the addiction and now they're still being a piece of shit, well, sure, maybe they just are sadistic fucks. But if an addiction is going on, usually, to be honest, they're not even thinking about it because their brain is consumed. In fact, there's some evidence that the part of the brain that gets triggered in addictions is the same area that's associated with OCD, obsessive compulsive, where like thoughts are constantly aggressively intruding your mind. Constantly. You're having near constant. Have you ever been like obsessed with somebody, like puppy love? You meet a girl or a guy and they're just so beautiful and you just think about them all the time and you can't eat. Imagine that times 10 all the time. All he can think about is his next hit. And his next hit is going to be getting the cash. That's a small hit. And then gambling to try to like run the stakes, right? So he gets a bit of a hit when he gets cash from people, and then he gets a bigger hit when he gets his drug.
I have a couple questions for you.
Oh my god.
Okay. Now, don't oh my god me, motherfucker. I'm one of the
I
people
know,
who's
I know, I know,
ask
bro.
for fucking empathy for you seeing that you're
I
a
know, I
degenerate
know.
gambling addict. So
Hassan is the fucking snake in the grass. Snake!
oh wait, was that?
Bro,
who was
I'm-
that? I can tell to the fucking dog shit microphone. Was that Mr. Fucking? I'm gonna talk
This is Hassan, by the way.
shit, and every time I'm a piece of shit to every one of my fucking peers, I'm just gonna say Hassan sucks with the hope that LSF turns around and focuses on that.
I'm glad that in all of this, Hassan feels the need to first address his beef with XQC before talking to the gambling addict. Great.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah,
XQC's
S-Fan.
perspective in this
Fuck
matter
you.
is irrelevant. Look, I want people to understand, and I want people to recognize that you yourself are a victim of the situation, even though you have been a gigantic piece of shit to many people, including, I guess, Miskiv, you gave him money too? I mean,
Yeah,
I gave him
but
money as well.
he did pay me back.
Wait, I can't hear you.
He did pay me back. He did.
Why can't I? By the way,
He said
I know.
I paid him back. He said I paid him back.
You have to raise me to 200%. I am quiet.
You tried
Okay.
it. You tried to pay me back.
I'm not gonna look. I love y'all, but if you're gonna bring the whole gang here, then bro, I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's not the whole fucking gang. I want to ask you questions that are about your personal experience and how you started getting addicted.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm asking is because, listen, motherfucker, there's a lot of people like you that get caught up in this shit. Okay. And I want to make sure that.
Just be warned, the sound balance is bad. It's not my fault. Hassan is really, really quiet, and Slicker's really loud. So I'm going to turn it up so we can hear Hassan, but I'm sorry.
People can at the very least, learn a valuable lesson not to find themselves in deep trouble in the same way that you found yourself.
Okay, so this is how it all started. Back in 2016, CS:GO Launch came out. You could gamble skins on the website.
Flicker, it's
I
been that
gambled
long, man.
Oh, I'll tell you, wait. I gambled skins on the site, and I enjoyed it.
What did he say?
I'll tell you, wait.
2017?
You could gamble skins on the website.
Flicker, it's
I
been that
gambled
long.
Back in 2016, CS:GO Launch came out. I gambled skins on the site, and I enjoyed it.
I
Then
think that's
stopped
that's how a lot of people started. I think. I really do think.
Okay, are you gonna let me speak? Thank you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So I was too addicted to it and shit, and then it came to.
This is a really interesting thing when dealing with addiction. When you have, so this is where privilege comes in. When you're rich, or you have lots of rich people around you that can support you, you can be a functional addict for a lot longer than somebody who is poor. That's one of the main distinctions. And then if you're doing drugs specifically, what you're going to see is rich people, for example, if you're addicted to cocaine, rich people will continue to pay for cocaine. Poor people almost always transition to meth because it's cheaper. So that is one of the biggest markers to me of if you've got a client, for example, who's got a gambling addiction and they've maintained it for 6 years, that says to me there's probably some privilege, that or it's not super severe, or you're really, really good at hiding things. You're kind of like a mastermind with money on the side, something else fancy is going on that you're able to maintain this, because typically when I have a more impoverished clients, they can't afford this at all.
To the point where I found out you could gamble with money. Play with $50. I wasn't rich. I wasn't a streamer or anything. I used to work.
Oh, don't worry. We're going to talk about loot boxes. We're just going to let him tell a story.
A normal job, and used to. Well, I'll be soon as well. But yeah, I used to gamble $50 to $100. I used to borrow from my managers. I would borrow from. I used to gamble from that. I saved. I remember I placed a bet, and I won big. I won from £200. I won 6,000, and then I gave it to my dad. Then I took it from my dad, and then gambled that and lost it all. And then I eventually stopped. My sister got mad at me. She shouted at me and she said, "Continue, I'll tell Baba." So I said, "I don't know how." She said, "Call up your bank and let them freeze your account. The only way we can access it is if I'm next to you and I have your card, so you can't do shit." And then I was like, "Okay, done that. Stopped gambling." And eventually I came back. She thought I was stopped and got over it. And I wouldn't tell her. I went back into it. It went into streaming, and it became even worse. I'd put in more and more and more.
So the more money you made, the more money you had to gamble.
It went from 100 from when I worked, but when I became a streamer, I started getting more, and I'd deposit in 1,000 or even sometimes 5,000 a day.
Did you ever win big?
Max I won was 20K, but that was 2019, and I lost it all. I don't know. There's no such thing of stopping in gambling. There's no such thing. For me, there was no such thing. Winning, no. Losing, obviously not. It came to the point of late 2019. like Octoberish, obviously I started asking my close streamers, for example, who we have right now, and then obviously Hassan and stuff.
So you started asking people in 2019 originally.
Late
when you
originally.
realized, like, you're not making enough money from
No,
streaming
no,
to
no, 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 no,
support
no,
your
no,
gambling
no, no,
addiction.
no. I was making enough. I was making a lot, but I would lose it all to the point where I'm like, I want to continue. So I'll be like, yo, boys, could you help me? I have this issue.
Okay, so
like,
what I said, yes, that's
so
what I meant.
I would
Okay.
lie to you guys. I also want to say that obviously I'm not proud of this, but I promised myself I wouldn't go to the point where I'd ask other streamers and stuff that I've never spoken to and stuff. But obviously it went to that. And I promised myself I wouldn't ask viewers. It went to that point. It just became worse. I was dating Erica in 2020, kept it away from her. She eventually found out through John Zerka, and we'd get in like constant arguments, and I'd lie to her and say that I stopped and stuff, and it fucked up my whole life. So
Like,
yeah.
I can ask something. So I talked to Tips last night because Tips was like, going off about how it's a ramen stuff for this whole thing. But he said gambling itself is haram. So why wouldn't you just take the gambling deal?
I'm not, my bro. If I wait, what?
Like if there,
Alcohol is haram too. It doesn't matter. He's not like following the fucking any of the pillars of Islam.
Right. But wait, what do you mean? What did you say?
like
Miz?
well, because like you would take from people and like wage that money. Why did it make
Right.
more sense for you to just take the gambling sponsor?
Gambling sponsor. Pfft, you think I didn't? I would be spamming steak. I'd spam people that were sponsored by steak and ask if they did, but then they eventually said that it's not available in my country. I wanted to. So I know this sounds.
Okay. This is a classic story of gambling, right? Everything that he's describing, right? I'd hide it from people. I would spend all of my money, but it wasn't enough. So then I would ask for more, and I would tell stories, and I would fabricate issues that were coming up. And I would just kind of spin this thread to try to get as much money from people as possible. Is this something people try with addicts, having someone who controls their finances? Yes. With gambling, this is sometimes done. Some banks, at least in Canada, for example, for some of my clients, we've been able to set up a bit of a relationship with the bank where they're aware that there's a gambling addict. So the person is capped on how much they can spend per day. And they basically have to have like themselves and like another person to sign off to agree that they can remove that cap at any time. And so they're super limited on like how much that they can spend per day. So some banks will actually now work with gambling addicts. At least I can say in Canada that this happens. I have no guarantee about like the UK, which is where Slicker is, or anywhere else. But that was something, for example, that we did set up with some of our clients, is basically having their bank somewhat limit the amount of money that they could spend. I think for my client, it wasn't my client, this one that had this bank set up. It was my coworker's client. So I don't know if my coworker, as like, she was a psychologist, actually a registered psychologist. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I don't know if she went in and signed as like a psychologist. I'm sure you would need some sort of doctor's note to verify that like you do have a gambling addiction and confirm that this is like a treatment that will be helpful. Do addicts have brief moments of self-awareness? Is literally a 24/7 trance. Addicts live in this dual world. If I go back to this picture, this horribly drawn picture, right? Remember, they're standing in the bus. They can see out the front windshield, but they're not driving it. So the whole time they have this weird mixture of like a really intense shame, right? As the bus is like driving over children and like causing havoc in their world. As the world is unraveling before them, they're burning bridges. People hate them, right? They know that they have these massive debts. They're neglecting their family. They're neglecting their responsibilities. They can see this all before them, and there is a part of like shame that goes with it. So then this is where like most people will say like denial is one of the biggest issues to overcome with addicts, is because what has to happen for them to like make this make sense basically is something called cognitive dissonance. Our brain loves to do this, which is basically if you have a view of the world, for example, scamming people is bad, and then you have a behavior that wholly conflicts with that idea, I am scamming people, something has to change. And in the case of addiction, the behavior isn't going anywhere. So typically what happens is like weird mental leaps that will be created to justify the behavior, to excuse, to minimize and escape the behavior. And it's often these minimizing, escaping, denial behaviors that all of us see, right? We're talking about the addiction, right? This is the bus. In here, we've got the denial, the manipulation, the self-lying, the minimizing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that is necessary to allow the behavior to maintain, because it's not like they're planning to change it anytime soon. but also to like exist. So like if you dig at people with addictions, if you get below all of this, especially if they trust you enough, which is like what an addiction counselor's job to do, is to get below all of this. Well, it's not our only job, but that's one thing that we're trained to do. Do a bunch of techniques. Once you get behind this, typically they will just break down. But it takes sometimes months to get there. Imagine, for example, I mean, in the case of Slicker, he can't really run away at this point. There isn't really any denial. So the most that he can do, and this is why you see him, this is why people being like, oh, isn't it handy that he's just going on stream and crying? He's a mentally ill guy who literally, he can't exist in cognitive dissonance anymore. He is living in the midst of his dissonance, where now he's looking at his behavior and he can't deny the fact that it's fucking horrible. And so what do you say? All you have to say is I'm a monster. And this is why I like really want people to chill out a little bit on Slicker, because this is like the ripe situation for suicidal type behaviors. Because if you're a fuck up and you hate yourself and you can't deny and excuse yourself for your horrific behaviors anymore, what's the option? Especially if everyone is attacking you and reaffirming that you're a waste of human space. What is the option? This is why we have to do this thing of like, we have to hold them accountable, but we have to have grace for the person within, because if we don't, some of the shit that you do in the midst of addiction, when you look at it for yourself, it will break you. And it's really fucking hard to come back from it. It's really hard. It takes you to become the bravest person on the planet. You have to be tougher than anyone else. Anyone who is sitting outside that has never dealt with addiction has no fucking clue what bravery is required to look at your own shit in the midst of your addiction, because your shit in the addict is really bad stuff. Almost always. It's at minimum missing birthdays, failing the people you love the most. At maximum, it is ruining every person, every relationship, and every good thing you have ever had in service for something that isn't meaningful. The drug. Thank you for all the subs, by the way. Appreciate all the subs. 5 gifted subs. Thank you, guys. All right. Keep going.
It was rude, but it was a
Damn, I was really mean talking to him in other streams. That's okay.
way. My initial thoughts wasn't to gamble with the money that I get. If I
It is okay. All you can do now, if you've been mean before and you're like, oh, fuck, is realize that we all exist within a margin of error. If you realize it and you correct it, that's the most we could ever ask from anyone. Just try really hard to actually correct it and take it seriously.
make a load of money, I'll take it out and pay people with it.
Bro, you're saying that, but you literally were getting money from other people, from what I understand. You were getting money from other people to pay other people, right? But also
No, that's false. That's false.
So
no.
okay, so that's not
No.
true. So you were just getting money from other
no.
people.
Let me speak. Let me speak. Hassan, please, bro. It was.
So this is like this. So I don't want to castigate Hassan too much because I don't know. I don't know him. So part of me wants to give him yeah, he's ignorant. He doesn't know better. When you're dealing with addiction and somebody's in the midst of being caught out like this, going into heavy interrogation mode is a really bad idea. And a lot of the questions Hassan is asking, as an addiction counselor, I would never ask because I know the answer to I know the answer, and I know that it's an uncomfortable answer, right? And at the point where it seems like Slicker is, where he's I'm a giant piece of shit. I'm horrible. I'm a monster. And here's the piece. And he still would do it again. And he knows it, right? This is the dissonance Slicker is existing within. He does know it's bad. He does know it's wrong. But he also knows he'd do it all again right now. Because in the midst of your addiction, before you've gotten any treatment or any space away from the addictive thing, you're still a slave. Just because he maybe hasn't gambled today, he is still just as, it's going to take at least a month usually. Usually for me, I notice my clients' actual personality come out about 3 to 4 months. It's really strange, actually. It's the most weird experience where basically every time I started therapy with a client at the center, I was I would introduce them. I'd have a couple of sessions with them when they first came. And I always held the space of being I wonder who you're going to be at 3 months, because you in addict version, you in like addiction form of yourself is not actually a good indicator. I have no idea, right? You would have people go from being like extreme introverts, very shy and anxious, to like by the time they got like 3 to 4 months of sobriety and like space away from the drug or the substance or the gambling or the behavior, they were like extroverted and funny and like interesting, and they had lots of like passions. But think, if you've entire brain is consumed with one thing, which is your drug of choice, which can include gambling, there isn't a lot of space for your personality. There isn't a lot of space for your interests, for thoughts about other things. You're just consumed. Is it categorized as a disability? Addiction isn't categorized as a disability either, like even like a meth addiction. So no. Especially if banks are sometimes capping people's accounts. It would be treated. So we typically have a medical lens when it comes to mental health. So this is probably I don't say this statement because I disagree with it at a deeper level, but you'll hear the claim addiction is a disease of the brain. So we view addiction as like a medical illness, essentially. The reason why I disagree with that, we can get into it later if people really want to know. It's a really good idea that has had some like pretty bad effects on the addicts themselves specifically. It's made recovery harder for people who ascribe to that lens, basically.
Big chunks would be to people I owe. Only big chunks would be to people I owe. I'd maybe keep like a 1K for me to use and play with, but then big chunks I pay people. I owed people a lot.
Does everyone believe in that? Everyone in this believe 100% that Slicker is a gambler? Yes. He's like textbook rudimentary human. He's like textbook gambling behavior. Like, especially if you read any of the messages from him, this is so quintessential, which again, I don't have any like sources to point this to other than like I worked in the addiction field for like 5 years now. Like I just am used to seeing it. Yeah. This is just exactly what it looks like.
Like even outside people.
So what did the train wrecks money go to? You said 20K?
People, because it was split. I'd owe someone in a month 25K. Well, not 25K. I'd be owing someone 20, for example, right? And I messaged Train, bro. He was like, are you sure it's for that? And he was like, yeah. And he would send it. He was like, in fact, let me send 25K. I said, no. I told him 50. But he said, he gave me 25K. I paid him off. Then I came back and he gave me another one. And I said, I pay him back. And he was like, okay, I want it this month. Then shamelessly I came back again and he got mad at me, obviously because I owed someone again. It would just keep getting worse. Like at the start, it would be owing people like 1K, 2K, like a month. Eventually it became like 15K, 10K, 20K a month.
Look, you understand that people don't think that you look or sound remorseful at all. Right?
Hell, I don't give a fuck. I know. I'm not trying to. Wait, what does that mean? As in, what do you mean? Wait, hold on. I don't want to say.
Right now, when we're having this conversation with you, or at least from my perspective, it doesn't feel like you're out of it. It doesn't feel like you are. Maybe I'm wrong.
Out of.
Oh my god. So again, this is Hassan not knowing a single thing, a single fuck about addiction. I actually saved this little clip here on Hassan's side. From Livestream Fails. It's from Hassan's side. Look what it's labeled. Hassan keeping it real.
To they want to help the victims, right? But I'll just say this much. What you listen to, from my point of view, and I've been in this situation, I've been in these shoes. I'm gonna keep it real. You are watching a person that has not hit rock bottom or has like the true remorse. That's all. That's what it looked like to me.
Almost no one who comes to recovery is there. True remorse takes a long time, and it takes a sober mind. It really does. So like, I don't know what he means by he's like dealt with this before. I don't know if he's personally done. One thing I will note is typically the people who are going to be most harsh on addicts about accountability is people with former addiction issues, because they know exactly what's going on. Like they know the denial. For everyone else though, I am going to introduce you to a wonderful new concept. Are you ready for more horrible art? Well, if you're not, too bad. You're getting more. It is called... I'll even impress you with it's by authors D. Clemente and Prochaska, and it is basically the I'm just blanking. I don't know if they call it the wheel. I think it's called it's basically the model of change. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, model of change. So I bet you I can pull up. Let's pull up a. Hold on. Let me find a drawn one so that I don't have to write this all. This was made for the addiction field by addiction researchers. The trans theoretical model is what it's now called. Made in 1983. Okay. Here's a good one. Right, hold on. Alrighty. Nope, that's horrible. Okay. This is called the trans theoretical model of change. Okay. I'm going to keep calling it the model of change because trans theoretical is just academic speak for many theories, above all theories, through all theories, right? It is not committed to one theory of addiction. Model of change. Most people enter treatment in this stage to this stage. You could argue that to be in treatment, you have to be in action stage. You could argue that. I don't know if that's necessarily true, particularly because there's a lot of people, for example, who they have two options, jail or treatment. And it's hard to say that you're in the action stage when you're basically not forced, but strongly incentivized to go to treatment, right? So here are the important stages. Pre-contemplation is a stage where you've got maximal denial going on. They refuse to even admit that there is a problem. These are people, for example, who there's basically not much reason to do any like actual addiction treatment with. The only treatment that like most people recommend at this standpoint would be some sort of like denial, harm reduction. It's going to be harm reduction and kind of like chipping away at the denial systems, confrontation. In extreme cases, this would be like an intervention. That's what this is. All right. If you listen to Slicker, he says things like, I'm a piece of shit. I know I have a problem. I know I've fucked up. So he can't be in pre-contemplation. He's actually, which is good. It's better than he was before. The next stage people move into is called contemplation. They acknowledge that there's probably an issue. Their level of commitment to how much it's an issue varies. But they say, yeah, there's probably an issue, and they're considering the possibility of maybe changing their behavior, but they're obviously not committed to anything. They're just contemplating the idea of getting help. That's what this stage is called. In this stage, the main thing you can do is be encouraging them to get help and helping them identify what specific type of help would be most beneficial to them. That's what you can do for people in the contemplative stage. Next is the preparation stage. At this point, they have decided, yes, I do need to get help. I do need to do something to change my life. And they are beginning to do the steps necessary to get there. They're calling treatment centers. They're applying to rehabs. They're calling around for addiction counselors. And they're booking their first meeting. Probably even, I would argue, going to their first meeting with like an addiction counselor or a social worker. Action is when they do something about it. This is when you're in treatment, you are actively trying to break the addiction, you realize that there is a problem, and you are actively, intentionally, every single day, thinking and working on reducing that problem. Next stage is maintenance. The maintenance stage is basically you've found the solutions to your problem, you know how to maintain sobriety. The whole job now is maintaining the sobriety. And then relapse. The reason relapse is included here is because 60 to 70% of addicts relapse. Relapse is expected, standard, and part of new treatment modalities include relapse prevention and response, which means I tell my clients, obviously, I don't want you to relapse. Obviously, I would like it if you spent the rest of your life clean, healthy, happy. However, there's a chance that you might relapse. Something might happen. You might get traumatized, grief might strike, a million things can happen, and we need to know what to do if you relapse to make the relapse as short as possible, as minimally destructive, and as quickly resolved as possible. So those are kind of the major stages. This looks really beautiful. The reality is more like, if we've got like pre-contemplative, contemplative, preparation, action, maintenance, relapse. Most people are going to be like, boo, 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 boo. They're going to be all over. It's not a simple process. We make it look beautiful in the model. It is more complicated than that. This is why, for example, if I am responding to somebody, the first thing I do as an addiction counselor is I try to figure out what stage of change I think that they seem to be at. And the best way I determine that is by the language they use around the problem. No problem, they're basically always pre-contemplative, very different help strategy than contemplative. Where I would say it seems like Slicker's at, and just so you know, I can say this, it's not a diagnosis, it's just a stage of thought, is it seems like he is contemplating. He knows that there's an issue, Slicker. He knows that there's a problem. He knows he needs to repay people. But when they later bring up treatment, he's a little bit wishy-washy about it. He's like, yeah, I probably should, but he doesn't seem super enthused to get treatment. Okay? Contemplative. I will say, as advice, in my experience, a contemplative person responds best to high levels of empathy, encouragement, and like warmth and softness, right? Because think, they're going in the right direction, right? The worst thing you could do to a contemplative person is shame them, because the moment that they finally acknowledge that there's a problem, there's such a human response where sometimes when people like acknowledge a problem, you want to like snap on them and they'll be like, hey, I'm really sorry I did this thing. And we'll be like, yeah, you did do that thing. That's very human. It's also the worst way you can respond to a contemplative person because they're for the first time acknowledging that there's a problem, and that means they're looking at all of the fucking chaos that they have created in the world and realizing that fundamentally they're responsible for it. Contemplative phase is a very scary phase. It fucking sucks. That's why when he describes himself as emotionally stunlocked, that makes sense because he's having to face full force all of the shit that he has done. And that is scary. Imagine you're a normal human being who actually cares about people and you've also done horrific things in service of an addiction. How do you think you're going to feel about yourself?
Gambling? I'm never going to ask anyone anymore. The why? If I didn't get caught, I would have still asked. If I didn't get caught, I would have still asked. So the people that exposed me, these are the people I wish that came sooner in my life than later. But will I stop gambling? The only way for me to stop is I have to go to rehab.
You think you
I
will?
have to speak
Thank you
to.
for recognizing that. Yeah, you need what a lot of people have not brought up in this situation is that you also do need, other than redemption or paying everyone else because the victims come first in the situation. And holy fuck, you need like literally a class action lawsuit style website in order to be able to genuinely track down every single person that you've like stolen money from at this position at this point. Obviously, there are people like myself and Misgive who is fine, you know what I mean? But then there is like the cancer patient that you were talking about. Okay,
Right.
Did that person get paid
you are
back, by
not
the way?
tracking this adequately at all. You told Misgive that you only have 12 people on your list.
No.
People from that list, you need to literally, or someone needs to literally get together every single person that you took taking money from and build a website or something so that there is like an adequate tracking process. But beyond that, for you personally, what you need to actually get for yourself is help. Medical help. Serious help. The UK has a lot of fucking gambling issues already. There has to be some kind of fucking counselor you need to talk to, and you need to do it immediately.
Flicker.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that yet. Like I did, of course, I did want to. Like I have to quit. I have to, but I'm not thinking of like fully doing the calling them yet up yet. I'm stunned. Locked. I was legit.
Yeah. See, I know I have to quit, but I'm not fully there yet. That's like classic contemplative. So, again, the best thing you can do is be like the response. Here's the ideal response. And just to be clear, before I say anything else, I do my best. Hi. When somebody's in this stage, I've been encouraged to change my stream name. Apparently it's a bad name. Best thing you can do in a contemplative situation is encourage them. Be like, hey, I know this is really hard and scary. I'm really sorry. And then be like, yeah, I've done really shitty things. And be like, yeah, that is true. And the best thing we can do now, the best way that you can guarantee that you don't repeat this behavior is you need to get help. And I'm really, really proud of you for acknowledging that this is a problem. Now, again, I'm going to say this again. We have to see people with a margin of error. Maybe Hassan and Mizkif don't know any better. If you've never dealt with addiction and it happens to you personally and you see the horrible shit, like somebody scamming 300K off of people and taking money from like chronically ill women, you're going to feel some sort of way. So I don't want to like fully castigate the streamers. Like they're not bad necessarily. Some are going to be better. Some are going to be worse. For example, XQC, for example, is trying to like pay off all the debt. So he like is at least well-intended. We're going to talk about enabling afterwards for sure. You know, some people might feel that Hassan is mostly there to content farm. I don't know. I don't know enough about Hassan to comment one way or the other. But yeah. Not the way to respond to contemplative people.
Still not from yesterday and the day before.
Yesterday. You're gonna be stun locked. Look, dude, your whole world is fucking going to shit. You know what I mean? Like everyone's coming out with the shit. You're gonna be stun locked. So, XQC and Train already said they'll help you with the list. The rehab thing.
That needs to also not border on enabling as well. For the record, I think it's a good thing that they're doing that, and I do agree. I've done this before as well, but that needs to be conditional on the tie it back to like some kind of counseling or something for Slicker as well, because if he just clears all of his fucking debts, which all those people do deserve to get that money back, absolutely, every single fucking penny. But
of course,
but Slicker himself is gonna keep gambling.
Right.
Maybe he'll be able to steal money from people like he has thus far, but he's gonna still do whatever the fuck he can because he's an addict.
Slicker.
I will, and I said it. I said if I, as much as a dirty person I am, it's the only thing that makes me have fun, but then at the same time makes me want to bang my head against the wall.
Slicker, I have a question.
Dude, this is crazy. You know what's fun? Fucking playing video games is fun. Okay, I suck at Valorant. I play anyway. It makes me very upset when I'm losing. It makes me very happy when I'm winning. That is entirely different than what you're in. Okay, you need.
No. Okay. Again, this is Hassan having no fucking clue about addiction. You playing Valorant with your friends, you know, I play Valor with Lily. Those are fun. When it comes to addiction, it is a much deeper relationship. Most people who go through recovery have to actually grieve the substance or the behavior. They have to grieve the loss of it because they know that they can never access it again. It is more than that, because when you're addicted to something, that is your one-stop shop, your guaranteed place to make you feel better. It's the main thing you have in your life. It is the best friend that is fucking killing you. Okay, so the idea of like, it's not fun. It's more than that. No, it's more than that in a very important way. This is the most important thing in his life. For the last 6 years, he has spent every waking moment thinking about it, dreaming about it, pursuing it, and scamming and ruining his entire fucking life. It is like the succubus lover who drags you to the bottom of the ocean and you love it the entire way. And you know that you should hate it. You know that it's wrong, but it's not just fucking fun. Okay? That is so dismissive of the experience of the average addict. Okay? It is everything. It is the greatest lover you've ever had. It is your closest friend, and it is also the worst poison you have ever drank. You fucking hate it, and you are in love with it. It is not fun. It is everything. And that is how he does not understand addiction. This is how like fucking mind-wrecking addiction is. Imagine the first time you were in puppy love, right? Some cute girl, you know, you thought about nothing. You would have fucking given your left nut for that girl, right? Now imagine that times 10 all the time for 6 years. It's not just fun. And to call it just fun, to dismiss it as, yeah, but it's not fun, is a Massive misunderstanding of addiction, which is why Hassan should never talk about addiction, because it's obvious to me that he knows nothing about it. Nothing at all. Honestly, kind of shame on you. I'm a little upset with you for responding this way to addiction.
Need to recognize that you are no longer in like, I'm playing a game. There's something, maybe it's because we're streamers that we're so fucking far removed from reality that we can like ask other streamers for 50 grand and like they'll give it to us. But you have to understand that you are in the real world right now. What you have done is something that literally could have criminal punishment.
And if that happens, I'll take it. I'll admit to every guilt.
But I'm talking to you, and I feel like you're not even. Like, gambling addiction is such a fucking insane demon that I'm talking to you, and I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Like, I don't even think you recognize what is
my bro, I do. I realize it. I've always realized how much of a piece of shit I am for what I've done. I always knew it. Again, people still not believe. But if you're a gambling addict and you obviously borrow from people, where is the common sense to see that you are a good person? There isn't. All my life, I've lived as a fucking thief, like a thief. But my intentions were to pay them back. But of course, it was still a thief because I would lie to them about the dates.
Slicker, can I ask you something? Okay, so here's what.
And I would agree. Somebody just around me said, I'm not even a Hassan fan, but your average person has no clue how to deal with these things. Absolutely. I'm already willing to extend a margin of error, right? Ms. Kiff, for example, in XQC, they have no fucking clue what they're doing. And that's fine. The issue is that Hassan is coming in here. He says, I know what's going on. I've dealt with these things before. So he's coming in, pretending to be an authority, and then he's talking about addiction, and it shows me that he knows nothing about addiction, right? Nothing at all. It is fine if you have no idea how to deal with this. That is completely understandable. Most people don't. It's fucking complicated. But just acknowledge that you have no idea. Just take the friend role, like Ms. Kiff is, or XQC. Just be like, yeah, that's pretty bad. You should probably go to rehab, right? That's a super reasonable response to have. It's also reasonable to be like, dude, like, this is really bad. Like, you scammed a lot of people. All that's completely fair. Coming in as the authority and saying, like, it's not just fun, shows like you don't know anything about addiction.
I'm a kind of guy that wants to talk about the big things first and the small things later. What I care about right now is I know that there's a lot going on and shit. Those people getting paid back, and I want to make sure, dude, for me or for yourself, more for yourself than anything. Would you go to rehab? Bro, Slicker, you can't live life like this.
Bro, I mean, at this point, yes, I don't know. I have to go myself.
Slicker,
I don't know, bro. I know bro. For me, it's an addiction.
Of course, that's why you have to go to rehab. You're lucky, Slicker. Look, we could possibly make this into a way. You are lucky, dude, where they could pay the debt and you can go to rehab, and we could try to make this go into something that, as negative and toxic and shitty as it is, it could be a better for your life, dude. You can't live life like this. I mean,
I know. Yeah, I will. I'll connect to my local GP.
Well, you said you have $0, Slicker. I will pay for your rehab.
No, yeah, I'm sure. I think it's free. It's free anyway.
Okay, so I'll definitely pay for it.
He lives in a fucking civilized country.
Yeah, so I'll definitely.
Yeah, but I might message you later on and be like, "Yo, miss, I have to pay off my interest." I'm sorry. I shouldn't even say that. This is not the time to laugh at that. But yeah, I will. I'll message my local GP and I'll arrange it soon.
Okay, so
how are we gonna get assurances that you're actually doing this and not fucking lying now that you've completely destroyed any sort of credibility that you may or may not have had?
I mean, if you want, I don't know, send you pictures, or my sister will let you guys know.
Because I do care. Not about you. Not only just about
you. No, miss, you did care. Like when I was there, you did care. I know you were pissed off at me every time.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you're not only you're gonna be good, but the people that are paid good. What if maybe I have somebody that works for me or something that I can like help you try to figure out this massive amount of money that you owe for each person, because I know people are trying to make lists and checking them twice of how much money is really owed, but I just want to make sure that we get every single person that you truly owe money to gets paid, and we start from the people that need the money the most to the people that need least.
The way I done it was I will just go through all my Twitters and I'll scroll down from the start and check, because I can remember.
PayPal. You could
no, PayPal's too much. No, because there was people I repetitively paid. Like I was.
But isn't it not just Twitter, man? Isn't it Discord?
I know, but you can literally fucking extract your PayPal transactions and then parse through it, especially sorting it by larger percentages. Larger numbers, scroll all the way back to 2019. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. You've been taking money from people since 2019. It's going to be a lot of fucking work. You know what else was too much work? You fucking taking a day off from streaming to ask people, every single person, including fans of yours, including mods of yours, whatever kind of money you could get from them. That was too much work, but you did it. If you want genuine rehabilitation, which I want that for you, you need.
It's hard work to be an addict. The work required to pursue the drugs or the behavior is very hard to compare to like rehabilitative work. Being like, it was a lot of hard work to scam people, and it's like sort of, but there's like an addictive major motivator. I mean, addiction is the greatest motivator ever for behavior that is in service to the addiction. I mean, it doesn't even feel like you're doing work. It's fun. You know, you scam people, you throw a little lie, they toss you 1,200. Big dopamine hit, right? A lot of addicts also get basically like dopamine hits preemptively. So like in the expectation and the like excitation that they're about to get the addictive behavior or the substance, they'll also get a dopamine hit. So like the moment he messages somebody a lie, he's already getting a bit of a hit, right? Which is very motivating. That is very different from owning up to lying to people, going off of the thing that has basically made you exist for the last 6 years. It has been the only thing that mattered, and confronting all of your demons and all the reasons as to why you were there in the first place. Because not only, here's the thing with addiction recovery, you don't just have to get sober, right, from whatever that it is, which is hard enough. You also have to confront all of the shitty behavior you did in your addiction, and you have to make amends for all of that. And then on top of that, you still have to figure out why the fuck you were addicted in the first place. What was going on in your life that the only coping strategy that worked for you was addiction? You have to figure out all three of these things. So like to compare drug-seeking behavior to rehab is like, I'll just be clear, rehab is so fucking hard. And the issue is, it's the only option. The only other option is remain addicted. And like we kind of say, like with addicts, they typically end up in jail, dead. Or I think that's it, jail or dead. The reality is most of them actually recover. Like 60% recover as well.
You need to fix yourself, and you need to also mend all of the fucking relationships, or not relationships, but all the money that you've stolen from people. Yeah, of course it's going to be too much work. What the fuck do you mean?
Right.
So let's.
It was too hot on this. No offense. Every time Hassan speaks, my ADHD kicks in. I'm not to be rude. I'm so sorry. It's just, you know me, Hassan. It's too hot to hear you most of the time. But if you want me to translate, I'll listen, because it's too hot to hear this guy, bro.
Vegito
no
said,
offense, Hassan. I love you. I genuinely. Yeah. What's up?
Vegito said that he'll help you.
What? How can he help me when I owe him?
Well, you paid him already.
No.
No, he said no. Look, well, guess what? By him helping you, he's not only gonna help other people, but he'll get paid. So he wants to help you figure out how much you owed people, how much money you owe, and that way, I know I can rely on him. Because I rely on Vegito for everything. I'll rely on him
just to let you know. Again, I didn't listen to you. There's a woman. The patient would like to join the call if that's okay.
Sure.
Sorry, I wasn't listening to you. Again, bro, I'm in a ADHD stage. But again, if you want to flame me, flame me. If you want to say whatever you want, sorry, that's not flame. If you want to say whatever you want, please do not be afraid. Like if you want to expose me and stuff. I don't know. How do I invite in this call?
But
you okay with that?
You asked someone for money.
I can easily check my Discord. Most likely, the day before, not yesterday. The day before. I was going to ask. I know. Look, I'm not lying. I'll speak everything, facts, because it got like, it came to the point where I can't even lie anymore. I was gonna ask right after my stream, but then obviously someone exposed me. And I'm not proud of it, but I don't know. I know I'm ill.
How much do you think the total?
I don't think of it like that. It's too hard to think of.
I don't care that you don't think of it like that.
I am 300k plus.
No, of course he doesn't want to think about this. He's like, hey, know all that stuff you've denied for the last 6 years? Well, you're confronting all of it. Also, what's the size of and magnitude? Can you give me actually all of the precise specs to all of the horrific things you've done wrong in your past? Could you tell me precisely how many times you stabbed your victim, right? Like, it's just like, of course he doesn't want to get into this, particularly publicly, because any number he says publicly, the reality is everyone's kind of holding him to it. He says like 300K. What if it's like 250? What if it's 100K? What if it's like 800K? Like, of course he doesn't have a number. He's been in maximum denial phase for like 6 years straight. The precise number doesn't matter. Obviously, getting the precise number eventually really matters. But like right now, it's like this weird mixture of like they're doing like accountability stream and intervention stream. And it's like in the middle of like a conversation where you're trying to get somebody to like acknowledge that they have a problem and fix it. Getting like really specific numbers don't really matter at all.
300k plus.
300k plus is how much you've taken from people so far.
Yes.
Fucking Christ. Okay. Who's the person that you added on the call?
One of the persons I also asked, but who needed a transplant. Sorry if I'm incorrect. And I asked to borrow.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. So
Hi.
You're the cancer patient.
It wasn't cancer. It's chemo.
Oh.
I was going through. It's used for many different illnesses. I have multi-connective tissue disorder, which is lupus, MS, Crohn's disease, EDS, lots of autoimmune. So that's what the chemo is used for. So
It's
it's not
like
cancer. It wasn't that bad.
Did Slicker pay you back?
No.
No.
How much does he owe you?
7K, I think. It's not the money that I wanted to ask about.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew Slicker because I admin for Raj Patel back before he was Austin. This is how Slicker got into Twitch, really, because he was King of Helldays.
Right.
I met you at Boonfest, and different places. You come to my parties. You've come to my parties before, TwitchCon and shit like this, but people don't remember me because I'm like just a person in the background. But man, like, you were my friend, bro. And before I was going for my transplant, knowing you're not going to pay, you're asking for my money that I put together to save my life, and you had no intention, even though I've already given you money. You never paid that back, and then you ask for another 10K before I'm meant to be going to America to pay for this stuff, man. I just want to know. I know addiction is difficult, but were you actually my friend? Ever? I just want to know that, man.
This is a really, really common, this is heartbreaking. This woman is heartbreaking. And this is where we shift into the space of saying, while all of us on the outside have to do our best to have this space between the kind of this theoretical conversation between empathy and accountability, when you get to the actual victims, this is a whole different conversation that I typically have. I don't expect anything of the victims of the addictive behavior, right? And a really common thing, right? She's talking about the money. And for the most part, comments that I see about this, people are angry on her behalf over the money, right? The tangible material thing. But the thing that really breaks people is the fact that the addictive behavior meant that they were willing to fuck over people who loved them. That's the really hard part. I remember one story of one of my clients. Her parent was a meth addict her entire life. Both of them were meth addicts, actually. And dad was basically never in the picture. I'm sharing this story specifically because it's a very public story. She shares her story all the time, just by the way. I'm not going to give her specific name because I don't know if she'd want it shared in the stream, but her story is a very public. It's been on multiple news stations and podcasts and stuff like that. So it's not I'm not sharing a private client story. She actually wasn't my client either. She was a client at the house. Dad is addict, mom is addict. And her whole life, she wondered what was so good about these drugs, and for her gambling was also an issue. What was so good about drugs and casinos that it made her mom pick them over her every single time. And so at 13, she figured, damn, that shit must be good. And so she tried it, right? And usually when victims of the addictive behavior talk about it, it's not the material stuff that crushes them the most. It's the question of, why wasn't I more important than this thing? Why did this thing become more important than the support and care and concern that I had for you? And this is why, for example, when I'm talking about having empathy for Slicker, I'm not demanding this of the victims at all. They're just victims of the addictive behavior, full stop, beginning and end. And what they choose to do to process that, all I can say is I hope that they do it well. And I hope that they process it in a way that they can be whole afterwards, essentially. This is the really, really, really messy part of addiction. This is the stuff that counselors and boots in the ground people are dealing with that make the solution to addiction not super obvious. And it's understandable why people want to hate people with addiction. The problem is that we can't, even though it feels right.
That's all. I knew you before all of this. I just want to know. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, and I know you're going through your own shit.
No, mine doesn't matter. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Mini Titan's here too. You asked him money from him. He's my roommate. Mini Titan's my roommate, man. You asked me for 5K 3 weeks ago, and asking him for 300. You tailored the amount to the person for how much you thought you could get. But you didn't know we're living together.
Lupe.
I had no idea you were asking other people. I thought you were my friend. You know? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So, can I ask you a question, Luke?
Go.
What do you have a job?
Not anymore. I had to retire because I got so ill.
Okay.
I put most of my money into crypto back in 2017. I used to work in the games industry. I used to make sound effects for video games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Cuphead. I worked on all of these games, but when my illness got worse, my hearing got worse, I can't make audio.
Okay, so Slicker owes you 7K. I would say, in my personal opinion, you are one of the top people that needs to get their money back. Before a lot of people. Let me just finish.
Just Slicker, though. I want to say, Slicker is one person who's...
And this is the thing that, like, again, I'm going to give margin of error for most of the people here. Sometimes you just don't know what to say in these situations, but they're missing her a little bit in all this. She's trying to say that she doesn't care about the money. Like, the money was never the problem. It's the fact that she was his friend and he was willing to take advantage of her. That's the issue that she has. So, like, she's like, sure, like, I know that I believe she, like, is willing to accept the money and she appreciates it and she's grateful for them wanting to repay it. But the, like, most important thing to her, the part that, like, wrenches her heart out is that, like, somebody, like, you have to care about somebody pretty fair bit to be willing to give them, like, 10K. It's like, she cared enough to invest in a person that she believed in and she thought she was helping, and she just got lied to. And that fucks with you and it really hurts. And, like, that's the most important part to her.
Support.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah.
This has happened to me before. Slicker had me putting a fucking police report for domestic abuse against another partner streamer who took 35K over 2 years for romance fraud. There is a police report open against him in the UK, but he's in the US. You know, this is your community that you have. This is your community. This is happening. It's not just Slicker. It's everybody.
Wait, what? You opened? Wait, can you? What are you talking about? There was another streamer that stole $35,000. You said?
Oh yeah, over 2 years. He was my friend, and when I said I can't fund your lifestyle anymore, he broke up with me.
Wait, is it for gambling? Is that why you took the money?
I'm sorry. I know this is unrelated, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Slicker right now. And it's not just him. It's just this is what Twitch breeds. This is what this platform breeds. People can get used so easily.
Did your boyfriend? Did he take the money for gambling?
He took the money to party with you guys, to enhance his stream, for a car, for equipment, for computer, so he can jet off and go hang out with Austin and Lord Kirk, you know, and you guys. No, I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if they want to. I didn't even mean to start up on this, but
no,
it's
a
lot of heat on you. But it's not just you, man. You got caught doing it on a mass scale, but people are having this experience every day. Thousands of dollars are being taken by viewers and people they think are friends or partners or boyfriends. But it's just a scam. It's not just you.
So, okay, before we start any of this, I just want to say I'm sorry. Here's what we're gonna do. So, just Luke, I think you were one of the first people that should be paid. I don't know what's going on with your story with your ex and all that stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't even.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotions going on today.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna message XQC you, and he's actually messaging me, telling me to get your. Do you have like a Bitcoin address or something? Because you should be paid first. Like,
yeah, I do.
Can you put it in here so we can get you paid first?
Yeah.
Because.
Do you mind if I just go for a smoke first? I got myself all worked up, and that's not good for my health.
Well, I don't think smoking is good for your health either.
It's medical cannabis.
Oh, okay, you're good.
So I don't have a seizure.
Oh, okay. No, I'm an asshole. No, they just if you can come back, if you could just give me your Bitcoin address so I can give it to XQC. He's messaging me right now, saying that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Wait.
Thank you,
Bro.
So what was the reason why you wanted to bring Lupelli on the?
No, I mean, no, sorry, she messaged me, so of course, she has a right to say her things, you know. I mean, of course, I don't want to.
I'm sorry. I only wanted to know if he was even my friend to begin with, or if he was just part of this.
Lepelli, I'm evil.
I'm give you money, it seems, and you asked me. Defending me with the whole.
I knew
that I'd given him money, so I want to know: were you my friend, or was it just because
I want you to know you were always my friend, okay? But I've done dirt to every single people I know on Twitch. Every of my friends, I've put them in dirt, and I've been very selfish. I've been stupid. I didn't think. I just wanted to feed my addiction more and more. Of course, we hung out a lot, even way before this whole thing happened. Even before I messaged you, we hung out at TwitchCon, you know. And I came over to you and we spoke and we hung out. But I could see the genuine person inside of you, and I can't say anything other than I know I am evil for what I did, and not even I have to wait for God, either karma, extreme karma, or God's punishment for what I've done. Like, you didn't deserve this, especially for what you told me the incident of previously to what I asked for.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just terrible at speaking.
Okay.
I get what you mean. Like, I just want to know whether you use me because you know that it happened before, or it was just.
Oh no, I didn't know anything happened about what happened with your situation. I didn't know.
You helped me when I put the police.
Yeah, like it's just so mind fucking to be like the victim of sort of like these behaviors, because it's just like it's just so, especially like if you've never been addicted, you just don't get it. And even people who've been in addiction, they get it enough to know that like there's an element of like intentionality and like choice within this. The issue is like the choice is very complicated. When I hear addicts talk about choice, I try to remind them that like you have a choice to take responsibility and like correct it. You didn't have a choice to like become addicted in the first place. Yeah.
Police report in, man. And then after I put the police report in, that's when you had problems and you.
The lapse of trust, like violating people's trust and making them feel like you're just taking advantage. I mean, she's been taken advantage of multiple times, so now she's being like, do I just scream, take advantage of me? Is this how I'm known? Do people know me as somebody who's easy to manipulate and take advantage of? Like, that's what's going on for her, is like the mind fucking.
I helped you and put it through, and eventually that's where it became to the point where I started asking other people that I didn't want to.
Right.
So I'm not trying to say it was clean. It was still evil. I still came back to you, and I want you to know, Lapelli. Even obviously, you know, I'm not going to do it anymore. Ask anyone anymore. But I want you to know. I know when I asked you again, I was going to stick to my word and pay you that money back. And to the rest of the people I owe money back, I know that sounds scummy. To leave you guys last or in a later stage. I had obviously some people in priority. Not in a way like that. It's like the desperate. Not saying you weren't or anything, but of course, like the desperate people I would have to owe first, and then the patient people I could already tell. Like, for example, Miskiff, I would have never, like, I would have left him till late, but then, of course, he messaged me, then I did.
It's not just me, man. You didn't realize Mini Titan, he sat next
I
to me right
know.
now.
That's not probably fully true. Like he's talking about like, oh, well, this is probably some of the denial stuff still going on. Like the reason he paid Mizkiff is probably in part because if he pays Mizkiff, then he knows that he could get more money from Mizkiff later.
I know.
He's my roommate too, bro.
I know.
Apologize to him.
It's not even a Mini Titan I have to apologize.
And so this is the really tricky thing, for example, in working with like somebody in contemplative stage, is like in the midst of a conversation, there will be certain areas where they're pre-contemplative still, like areas of problem that they like won't acknowledge. So like they might be willing to be like, yeah, I do have an addiction, but then you're like, yeah, and you also were abusive to your children, and they're gonna be like, no. So they're really pre-contemplative about that. Well, they'll be willing to be like, yeah, I was a really, really like terrible parent, and I had an addictive problem. But maybe they won't acknowledge, for example, that like they have that's another really common issue. They have like major issues with authority that typically like end badly for them and are like often driven by their own behavior. Like they're super rude. They're constantly like undermining authority, constantly like attacking them and picking fights with authority, stuff like that. And so like you can be contemplative in acknowledging your addiction, and maybe like pre-contemplative in like your toxic behavior that you engaged in during the addiction.
I apologize to everyone.
Everybody, man.
It's not even one person.
I mean, do you want me to bring the whole Raj Royale here now?
Help. Like, you need to get your fucking help, man. You need to talk to your parents about this too. Like, what's happening with your family? Like, this is big news. This isn't just Twitch things. This isn't just drama. You know, with the amount of money you've taken overall, this could be on the fucking BBC. What's that going to do to your family? Your reputation, their reputation. You've got to think about these things. It's not just like on the internet. These people are real. They can actually fuck your life. They can fuck your family's life, man. Have you even told them the seriousness of what's going on?
My dad has kind of similar to what you have, Lapelli, you know, MS. Yeah. He also has like diabetes. So
yes. So you know this is.
So really if I told him he would pass away. He's been through situations.
What happen when he finds out through some random neighbor because they've seen it on Twitter? When you start trending, you know, like what's going on, man? Like what happens when he finds out through something else just how much money you've taken? And that he's not seeing that you've gambled away. You've got to get ahead of that.
I would.
So I'm going to move on to one thing, which is Slicker making an apology video. I'm going to jump into the middle of it.
Ever since I started streaming,
It's really quiet, so I'll turn it up. This was a video that made me be like, okay, I feel like I'm going to talk about this.
I started playing little by little. 1,000 to... It wasn't even, not even 1,000. When I worked for my old job, it was $50. And eventually it got higher and higher and higher and higher. And it would stack on people I owe. But I've paid a few people back. I'm not going to say I'm proud because, you know, obviously there's so many people I haven't paid back. And there's so many people I asked for so much. I can't even I'm not asking for forgiveness. I can never ask for forgiveness. This is I don't know. I don't know. It was right for the people to have come out. I'm sorry for keeping you guys, silent about this. I'm sorry for the promises I've falsely made. Surprisingly, I'm not even gonna lie. There's no script here, so that's I don't know if I'm doing like.
So they basically had to turn chat into emote only because people were screaming like horrific things at him constantly.
Even saying proper English, if I have told it is really hard. I'm sorry.
Hey, where'd my money go?
I can't answer it.
Here you go. Hope this helps. Where those tears at? Holy place. Yes, with Russell.
I borrowed from so many people. I would never tell them it was for gambling. I have told a few people. They weren't happy about it. They hated me for doing it. They
Scammer, 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 scammer. Who showed you gambling? Was it X?
They never knew I was asking other people. I would
talk to someone, bros, and stay away from that shit website.
Talk shit in DMs and stuff.
That's nice.
I would come out with bullshit. And it was just the start. Ever since I started streaming, it was the start. It was the start of like, no, brother, no. Ever since I started streaming, I started playing little by little. 1,000 to... There wasn't even... No, sorry, not even 1,000.
So here's the question. Let's talk about enabling now. Okay. This one's going to be trickier to talk about. As much as like so many people have got on like kind of the hate train, most people realize that being on the hate train is really bad. Let's just use this little section here. Let's talk about enabling. So, how do you enable somebody in addiction? I kind of see enabling. I see kind of, we've got like this spectrum. On like one side, I mean, we can draw this on another way. Over here, I kind of see it more like this, actually. I'm going to draw what I do for my clients. You kind of have this bisecting triangle of increasing behaviors in two directions. Because for you to respond to addiction healthily and for people around you to respond healthily, they have to exist with two dual behaviors going on at all times in a healthy balance. On this side is going to be things like compassion. And on this side is accountability. If you're familiar with fun words, this is called a dialectic. I love dialectics. If you want an example, before I get into this, of another famous dialectic, it is also actually an addiction thing. It is, it's the Serenity Prayer. It says like, Lord, please help me to change the things that I can and accept the things that I can't, essentially. And so it's basically this dialectic between acceptance and change, which is essentially acknowledging that even though something like accountability and compassion often seem to go directionally opposite to one another, a dialectic takes two opposite ideas and blends them together to find a better, wholer idea. So at the extreme end of accountability, when there's only desire for accountability and no compassion, we typically end up with shame. Now, shame, when we think about shame, we think about it in a very simplistic way. We think about people being like, you're a dirty, bad monster. But shame can also just be expectation. And we, man, those of us who lean more towards the accountability type with people, we can destroy and crush people with our expectations, okay? And it's important to know which side you fall on. In general, I find men tend to fall over here and women tend to fall over here. But for example, my personality falls more onto this side. And so I have to actively do mindful things to make sure that I have high compassion as well. Compassion at its worst is enabling. And it's really weird in our society because in our society, we have gotten extremely comfortable with the idea that shame is really bad. We're pretty much all in agreement with that. There's not a lot of people that you have to argue with to be like, hey, shaming people, not a good idea. Enabling, though, we don't even know how to tackle it as a society. We still see enabling behavior as just like, oh, it's well intended, it's nice. It's just, harmful. And it's like, if it's harmful, it's harmful. To some extent, some level of shame is also nice. You're trying to encourage people to take responsibility. The problem is your shame, your accountability predilection. Sorry, that means your natural leaning. Proclivity is another word for that. Can do harm as well. They're both bad. I would argue both of them can become abusive as well, right? I have seen people enable their children to the point that I would argue that they have abused their children from enabling them. I've also, as a money investor, have seen parents shame their children to an abusive level. They're both a problem. Enabling is the classic story of the witch with the candy and the children, where you feed and feed and feed and give and give and give and give and give and shield somebody from responsibility and accountability, and you just give them grace beyond reason. So what does enabling look like? Let's start with really self-evident enabling. Your loved one has an addiction and they do a crime. And they have bail posted for it. You pay their bail and you get them out of jail. That's enabling. There's a consequence for crime, especially if they are going to have to go to guard, especially if you're bailing them out for just a little bit. I would argue bailing them out one time might not be enabling. Bailing them out the 17th time is enabling. Here's an even more classic one that I have had to deal with families of addicts. Somebody has probation. They're not allowed to be out past a certain time, so they have a curfew, and they're not allowed to own certain substances, firearms, etc. They live with their elderly mother. The cop comes by, it's past curfew, their probation officer comes by, and they ask, hey, where's your child? It's curfew. And your parent lies and covers for you, so you don't get in trouble with your probation officer. That's not compassionate. I mean, it is, but it's compassion done wrong. You're enabling them, and it's harmful. It's really bad for people to do this. It is very destructive, and I don't think our society realizes how destructive enabling is. It's why I always have to fight with leftists about enabling behavior, because we just as a society have no conception of why enabling is a really big issue, right? So this is the question, and this is a really tricky one. We do need to get me a digital art pad. I can draw definitely better by hand than I can in here. Is XQC and Mizkif paying off Slicker's debts enabling? This one's really fucking complicated, right? For example, say you have a child who's an addict and they have their own children. You don't want to call CPS because you know that that's not a good experience for children. So you keep taking on their children, you keep caretaking for them, and when your child comes back and wants the kid back, you give them back. And so you never blow the whistle that they're not being good parents, that they're not taking good children. It is kind of enabling, but it's enabling in an understandable way because you don't want the child to go to CPS. That's not a better solution necessarily. But in a lot of cases with CPS, if there is a relative who's willing to caretake that child, who's a healthy, I don't know what they don't know as vet for, but a healthy relative, they'll often allow the relative to take care of the child instead of putting them into the foster care system, right? So it's I understand the concern, I understand all of that, but by not whistleblowing, you're preventing your loved one from getting a social worker, from getting them into assistance programs, from having a structural accountability system that they can be superimposed into. That would be enabling, but it's understandable. Paying off the debts is really complicated because while it basically means that Slicker doesn't have accountability, he is not responsible for fixing these things eventually, it's going to do two things. Number one, decrease his overall pressure, which might make it easier for him to go and get treatment if he's not stressing about the $300-some thousand that he owes people. And number two, there are real victims of being scammed who need their money back. So it's really complicated and it's hard to say. Here's what I will say. If XQC and Mizkif continue to pay off his debts and he does not go to rehab and they don't guarantee that he is going to rehab in exchange for them paying off debts, then they're enabling him. It's as simple as that. If he decides to not go and get treatment, if he drops out of treatment and they continue to pay his debts, they pay off everything, especially if they continue to do things like just donating money, this is enabling. Nobody should be donating money to him right now. No one should, because you can't trust him, right? He is aware that he has a problem, and he's also said that he doesn't know if he wouldn't do it again. There is no other option but gambling for him. That's where he's at. He's self-aware of his addiction. Donating all of this money to him is not wise. If anything, it should go to a third party. Like if he really wanted to do accountability, and if his friends wanted to support him in overcoming this without enabling him, then basically they would set up a third-party donation system where people can donate money to, and then people who he has scammed will be paid out of there, and he will never have access to any of that money. That would be the most appropriate and compassionate thing to do. But it's a lot of work. All right? So that would be my take. Enabling is super dangerous. Other forms of enabling is, for example, if you know that they haven't paid you back and you give them money again, you don't realize it, but to some extent you're enabling this person. You are allowed to have boundaries. Enabling is essentially a boundaryless relationship. And there is no responsibility. When you shield people from their own responsibilities, you basically take away experiences that might be the invaluable moments that they needed to change their entire life. If you enable them, you thwart that from ever happening. But if you shame them, you will crush them with it. This is why you have to do both of these things together. If you just have compassion and no accountability, you're often going to enable the person. If you only have accountability and no compassion, you're going to shame that person and crush them, right? This is why you need both of them together. All right. A lot of people have watched this and said that he's crying fake tears. Hard to say. Here's going to be my key thing with those of you. I think there's many of you who maybe don't know me. So I've said this a lot in the past and I'll say it again. It is possible that Slicker is faking being upset, that he's faking crying. I believe he streamed again today and was crying the whole time. It is possible that he is faking being really distressed and he's a malignant, sadistic, evil fuck putting on a show. That is possible. The issue is, if that's happening, he is still acting like somebody who feels remorse, who has a mental illness, and who is in deep distress. And the issue with acting is acting looks the same as real life. It's really hard to tell these things apart. This is why, for example, behavioral analysis should never be included in like a court case. Because somebody's stoic face in response to grief might be because they have a weird thing with emotion and they don't like expressing things, or they wanted to be strong for their child. It might also mean that they don't care about their lover. It might also mean that they think that the grief looks like being stoic, and so they're putting on an act of being stoic because they want to convince people that they're in grief. It could mean any of these things, but you don't know. This is why behavioral analysis is terrible. So he might not care. He might care, but if it looks like mental illness and distress, calling it anything but that without very good evidence, like receipts, like him messaging people after crying and be like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I put on such a good performance. I managed to cry the whole time. Especially if you get like a picture of like fake tear bottle, that would be the most effective way to prove that he's faking it. But it's been really gross to me to watch people analyze his emotional response and say it's the same shit with Kyle Rittenhouse and his panic attack. And saying, well, it looks like a fake panic attack. No, it just looks like a panic attack. You just hate him and think it's fake. Okay? All right. Now we need to go on to the bigger meta conversation, because Slicker points to a problem that has been going on in Twitch for some time. As I started out with my stream, we watched a video by Soda Poppin in August where he said that there is a serious problem with the amount of gambling and slots going on within Twitch.tv. In fact, there's an entire section dedicated to it, which is very interesting because gambling seems to ruin people's lives. Imagine if Twitch had an entire channel section devoted to any other form of addiction. Like, what if it just said, like, nicotine or, like, nicotine, heroin, and friends? How would we feel about that? Probably not very good. What if it was just dedicated to, like, partying and alcohol consumption? Would we be okay with that? What if they had an entire section dedicated to partying and alcohol? I think there would be some problems with that. But more importantly, it speaks to a willingness of particularly tech companies and gaming companies to weaponize and utilize gambling techniques and gambling methods and gambling reinforcement patterns to hook people in and to pipeline young kids from loot boxes to slot machines. And I'm going to tell you why this is the case. And don't even worry about it. I have fucking data to back me up. There has been studies on this now, Giga Chad. The main thing I will say is, here is my claim. Somebody clip this. This is my TLDR claim. I believe that loot boxes are a necessary and fundamental pipeline to online gambling. I don't think that loot boxes are just like a gateway or that they're just correlated. I think if you're doing loot boxing and you enjoy it, the necessary conclusion of that behavior is that you should gamble. It is a direct pipeline to it because loot boxing is just shittier gambling. That's it. That's all it is. So, let's talk about it. All right. I'm going to bring up my disgusting drawing pad again. So, we're going to go back to some of the basics. Get excited, okay? I'm going to introduce you to a fun new concept. Another one. Welcome, class. Okay, welcome, class. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Right? We talked already about dialectics. That was the first wonderful word. Actually, I think the first word I gave you that was super fun was predilection. So, just write that one down. There'll be a pop quiz afterwards, so make sure you're taking notes, okay? The second word I gave you was dialectic. Take a note, pop quiz. Bastony, if you're listening, we're going to poll you on it. See if you remember what these words mean. The next word and concept that I am going to introduce you to is called let's do this in typing. Behaviorism. And I'm Canadian, so I'm going to spell it like a Canadian. And fuck the rest of you if you don't like it, okay? Behaviorism. For those of you who are unaware of behaviorism, have any of you ever heard of Pavlov's dog? No? Yes? Okay. Pavlov's dog is a very simple study. Let's look it up. There's probably a super fast video I can find on this. Rather than me explain it, let's get some alternative media in here. All right. Great. Nope. This is all going to tie back into addiction.
Pavlov's aim was to discover what caused saliva to flow. He rerouted the salivary ducts to the outside of his dog's cheek so that he could collect and measure the spittle. Perhaps, he thought, the production of saliva might be the result of a fixed nervous reflex, like a knee jerk.
This is a reenactment. Oh, you guys can't see it. Hold on. Let's start again. This is a reenactment. Okay, we're ready to go. It's got doggies. This study was done before video cameras existed. This is not the actual footage of Pavlov, just to be clear.
Pavlov's aim was to discover what caused saliva to flow. He rerouted the salivary ducts to the outside of his dog's cheek so that he could collect and measure the spittle. Perhaps he thought the production of saliva might be the result of a fixed nervous reflex, like a knee jerk.
5 минут 49,5 секунды.
After taking many measurements of spittle, he confirmed that the dogs drooled automatically when their tongues touched food. He called the response the salivation reflex.
4,5. Хорошая собачка. Я предлагаю поменяться.
But his work started to run into trouble. As his dogs became familiar with the experimental routine, they started to fill their cheek tubes before Pavlov had a chance to stimulate their tongues. The dogs were learning to anticipate food. Pavlov tried a new technique. He erected screens so that the dogs couldn't see what was going on. Before passing meat through the hatch, he introduced a stimulus that was totally unrelated to feeding. A ticking metronome. At first, the dog dripped saliva into its cheek tube only when the food appeared. But after a number of trials, the dog began to connect the ticking with the arrival of meat. Soon, the sound alone made the dog drool. Eventually, the dog salivated as much to the ticking itself as it did originally to the presentation of food.
Полная. Идите сюда. Что я говорил?
He called this new response the conditioned reflex.
Собака.
Whatever the stimulus, his dogs could soon be conditioned to produce saliva. Pavlov believed that he had discovered how animals learned, even in the wild.
Okay, behaviorism based. Somebody said behaviorism's boring. You're boring. Behaviorism is one of my favorite things. Okay, let's just shrink this though. Okay, sorry about how loud that was. It assaulted all of our ears together. We were in this together. Okay, so let's talk about behaviorism because it's very important to understand behaviorism if you want to understand gambling. Gambling, the reason why it's addictive isn't because of substances, right? Everyone understands to some extent why something like meth is addictive. It's because it causes a massive, massive release of dopamine, and it also prevents the reabsorption of dopamine. So the dopamine is active in the synapse for longer, and there's just a shitload more of it than normal, okay? So that's why substances are addictive. But behavior addictions are strange because they mimic substance addictions. They mimic how addictions present, which we'll go over in a little bit. They mimic tolerance, withdrawal, mood modification. There's kind of 6 major factors that we kind of consider important before we call something an addiction. And gambling and sex actually, and porn as well, and there's new talk about like gaming in general, satisfy all 6 of these criteria. So why are behaviors addicting? Specifically, why is gambling so addicting? Because gambling is very easy to get addicted to because it uses a very, very simplistic system in our brains. So what basically they were talking about in the video of Pavlov is called classical conditioning. So that's when you have a conditioned response. Oh, hold on. That's when you have a conditioned response and you pair it with like an unconditioned stimulus like this. So this would be like a light. The conditioned response is drooling. Hold on. I shouldn't have put light there. I messed up my own thing. That's fine. With a conditioned stimulus. These are very natural things. So food. So what you're going to have is basically conditioned stimulus gets paired with conditioned response. This is natural. When you eat food, you salivate. Simple. And what you do is you pair the conditioned stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus, and you eventually create a conditioned response to the point that over time, the unconditioned stimulus becomes now the conditioned. I believe you actually put like a U here. A conditioned stimulus now is paired with a conditioned response. So now when the dog sees the light bulb, it salivates at the light bulb. Okay, this is the basics of clicker training, for example. Okay. However, we've realized that there are many ways that you can reinforce different things to create different behaviors. So, talk about it. There are different types of reinforcement patterns that train things faster or slower. So, for example, you can give something on like a, what is it called? There's a varied ratio and a, so there's a different type of ways in which you can reinforce. So one way that you can reinforce something is that it's kind of like 1-to-1. So every time the light goes up, they get food, right? And we would call that, I think it's a CR1. Might not be C. There's a lot of letters in behaviorism. It's very annoying. They try to be mathematical. It's very weird. But you can also do something like this, where you can do a varied reinforcement of like 5. So that means out of 5 times when the light goes up, somewhere along that time, they'll get food, right? So maybe the first time the light goes on, they don't get food, but the second time they don't get food, but the third time, maybe they get food that time. And then the next time it would change. So maybe it would be on the first time, and then in the next 5, maybe it would be the 5th thing. So that would be considered a varied ratio reinforcement pattern. So there was a really, really interesting study that we did with rats, because we love using rats for everything. So we basically had a bunch of rats, and we taught them to press a lever, and if they pressed a lever, they would get food. So that would be the 1-to-1, right? You press a lever once, you get 1 pebble of food. And so what they did is they put rats on a whole bunch of different reinforcement patterns. So one was the 1-to-1. You press it once, you get food. Another one, they did 2-to-1. So every 2 presses, you consistently get food. Every single 2 presses, you get food. This is going to be time. This is going to be number of presses. So what we kind of saw is kind of like this. It was pretty consistent over time. They just like pressed pretty consistently. When they wanted food, they would get food, right? Wasn't too crazy. 2-to-1, I believe, I can't remember what you got. I can't remember if it slowed or sped up. The important part is here. When you put them on a varied reinforcement pattern, say we did 5. What we saw is that over time, they increased exponentially the amount of times that they pressed. It shot up, right? They pressed a shitload amount of time. I guess this one's wrong. This one should actually be more like math. This one's going to be more like this. Number of presses over time. What we saw with this one is that over time, they started pressing the normal amount, and then it shot up through the roof. And they were like, oh, interesting. And then what we saw is that the greater the number of varied reinforcement, say you did it like this, what you'd start to see is once they got that first reinforcement, their behavior would boom. It would fly off the chart. They would, once they got that one reinforcement, they would just be pressing, and they would press like crazy. And the more varied the ratio was, the more they were pressing, the more intense they got about it. Because it was like this weird tension where before, when the food was available at any times, they weren't that motivated. They mostly just pressed when they wanted it. But at a varied ratio, there's like this tension. We're not totally sure what it is, but basically it's probably the fear of like, I'm hungry, but I don't know if my press will actually mean that I get something. what we saw is that basically they press way more often. We're not totally sure why this is the case. But what casinos realized is that varied ratios are incredibly addictive. You could, once you had something start at like a VR5, you could bump them up to a VR100, you could bump them up to a VR1000, and you would see them maintain this insane behavior reinforcement pattern. Insane. As long as there's like little tiny bits, right? Varied ratios of reinforcement are highly addictive, and they're what gambling casinos capitalize on. Because here's the thing, in a VR 1000, you could get 2 reinforcements back to back and then not get reinforced again for like 400 pushes. But every push, you think the next one's going to be it. In the case of the 2-to-1, you know if it's your first push that you're not going to get food, and you know in your second push that you will get food. So you're mostly going to go click, 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 click. But in the case of the VR 1000, any next click could be when the reinforcement comes. So you're highly motivated to just keep pushing because you click it, you don't get it. You're like, oh, I didn't get this time, but next 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 time. And it grows and it grows and it grows. Yes, it's crazy. The VR reinforcement thing is crazy what it does to rats. It makes them addicted. Okay. So this is the mechanism by which gambling facilitates addiction. Okay. Now we need to talk about loot boxes, because I said before, I'm going to prove to you that loot boxes are a pipeline into gambling. All right. Okay, hold on. We got a video. I don't know why it's using Bing again. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. I can't, my, this not so
Whether you like it or not,
constantly switches to Bing, and it's super annoying. All right. Let's turn down the volume, and then I'll turn it back up as we go.
When you buy a loot box, you're gambling. Sure, it seems like you're just harmlessly spending a few bucks on random skins. But what you're actually doing is feeding your hard-earned money into an unregulated wagering system capable of inspiring destructive addiction. But before we get into that, what are these delightful mystery crates? Loot boxes are in-game chests that you can either pay for or earn through grinding a game. When opened, they contain anything from cosmetics, to characters, to items, with the only catch being that you don't actually know what you're going to get in yours until you open it.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Over the last few years, we've seen an enormous surge in the popularity of loot boxes, but they've actually been around a lot longer than that. The first video game to incorporate them was 2007's ZT Online, a Chinese free-to-play MMO that explicitly advertised itself to players as extremely addictive.
全国目前发现一种新的特殊疾病，全身将以呆滞延伸，全国陷入一片恐慌。
玩游戏干嘛那么累？征途 Online 让你轻松升级。
The developers, Zeng 2, were tired of people pirating their games or just playing on shared copies at internet cafes. So they devised loot boxes as a way of ensuring consistent revenue from their game. Following ZT's success, a wave of free-to-play PC and mobile games spread across Asia, and eventually led to the emergence of the gacha game in Japan. Named after gashapon toy vending machines, gacha games revolved around collectible characters contained in loot boxes, unlocked through microtransactions.
Ooh, nice, a David. Oh, 3 stars.
I'm ready to fight for you.
No, you're good. Hey, Bryce?
Yeah?
Eat, David.
Why are you making me do this?
It will make you stronger.
But this infatuation with collectible items gained by chance with slight monetary risk has existed in the West for decades too. Just look at baseball cards, or if you live anywhere other than the States, Kinder Eggs.
Me on Scrabbly. Shaka-dooby! Doubly shaka-dooby! Pop swabble! Toy!
Ugh. You know what? Maybe we should ban those too.
Snuggle! Whee!
Anyway,
horrible.
loot boxes in their virtual format were first introduced to Western gaming audiences in 2010 with Team Fortress 2. And after the tremendous revenue their inclusion generated for Valve, other companies almost immediately started building loot box reward systems into their own full-priced retail games. From FIFA to Mass Effect to Overwatch to Call of Duty, loot boxes became the industry standard for any game hoping to make money after launch. And that's where the trouble began.
So you see, that's where the trouble began. That smile. That damn smile.
Look, loot boxes are designed to feel good when you open them. They have flashing lights, bright colors, items spilling out onto the ground like an overflowing treasure chest, and you're guaranteed to get something good, if you open enough of them.
No, I haven't gotten the heirloom package yet. Whoa! Baby! Woo! See, it's right up there. You gotta believe. Right? I believed.
We've all felt that before, but does it remind you of anything?
When you see the symbols fall into place and create a combination, there is a certain charge you get from that really can't be replaced with anything else.
Yes! Stop! Stop! No, stop! Yes! Keep it going, We can't stop, won't stop.
You're gonna watch the reels spinning. You're gonna feel a sense of expectancy, like the game quite isn't over yet. But essentially, the game was over the second the player pressed the button or pulled the lever.
But there's one major difference between slot machines and loot boxes that makes the latter much more appealing to game publishers. The house never loses. Unlike in casinos where you could potentially win some money if you're lucky, when you finally get that Black Ice skin in Rainbow Six Siege, Ubisoft doesn't lose a cent. Now, it's not a one-to-one comparison because unlike gambling, when you drop money on a loot box, you're guaranteed to get something, even if it's not what you hope for.
Ooh, okay. I see you, boo. I see you. Look at that. Honor Guard. This is one that we were going to buy, not necessarily this skin in particular, but I did want to get a skin for the wingman. Oh, no. Damn it. This is the Mozambique. Damn it. Oh, this piece of garbage.
In order to skirt the gambling accusations and offer consolation to their player bases, games like CS and Dota allow you to sell loot box items for credit that has real-world value. These marketplaces offer you the chance to slog your trash off to someone else for some form of compensation. But the biggest concern surrounding loot boxes right now is their lack of regulation. They make game publishers ludicrous amounts of money because they encourage players to grind and are extremely satisfying to open.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I 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 need it!
However, it's for those same reasons they can be harmful to those susceptible to addiction, like minors. Back in the 90s, similar concerns arose when baseball card makers and even Nintendo faced lawsuits claiming that their trading cards were illegal lotteries. But because people were receiving something with real-world value, these allegations never held up in court. They technically weren't forms of gambling.
Well, technically, just shut up!
Whether a loot box's contents have real-world value or not, gamers are still wagering money for a shot at something. And to a lot of people, that sounds a lot like gambling. In an attempt to combat this, China and South Korea have both enacted laws that force game publishers to publicly divulge the actual odds for getting any given item from a loot box. And this new law hilariously revealed that Dota 2 fans only had a 0.1% chance of getting an Arcana in Rylai's Battle Blessing during TI7.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Meanwhile, in the Netherlands and Belgium, loot boxes have been straight up banned, and other EU countries are considering that same route. While some lawmakers are stepping up to tackle the issue and some states have introduced and passed legislation, the US remains the furthest behind in the battle for loot box regulation. But at least that conversation seems to be taking place. And with EA's release of Star Wars Battlefront 2 at the end of 2017, we got a glimpse into why it's important this discussion is happening. Battlefront 2's loot boxes featured star cards, which boosted specific characters you might not even have and could realistically only unlock through, you guessed it, opening more loot boxes. But what made EA's system different was that players willing to splash the cash were guaranteed more star cards and more characters, which actually increased the chances of in-game victory.
It's pay to win. Pay to win in our $60 multiplayer game. It's no.
By combining the competitive nature of players with their inclinations toward loot boxes, EA Frankensteined something that inadvertently exposed the dangers this type of system can pose to impressionable minors. Following the severe backlash it generated from the gaming community, EA eventually ended up pulling everything but cosmetic items out of the loot boxes.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
And even though there are rumblings that the industry is moving away from loot box systems, we're still seeing games being released with a profitability model focused on these microtransactions. Look, at the end of the day, loot boxes aren't necessarily bad. In fact, I love them, but it would be negligent for us to think there shouldn't be more safeguards in place to protect the easily impressionable from the dangers they may contain. If you really think about it, being pregnant is kind of like being a loot box. You might get...
All right. I'm going to argue loot boxes are just kind of bad, right? They're bad in the way of essentially that they're pipelining. So let's compare this to another addiction. Most people who develop a stimulant addiction typically usually they start by smoking or doing weed. That's most people. They're pretty simple drugs. And then they try cocaine typically for the first time. Cocaine is very expensive. The high is very short, but it's decently clean. The high is decently clean, and the withdrawal is not too bad if you're not doing too much, right? So cocaine in many ways is, you can be addicted to cocaine, just like you can be addicted to loot boxes. But for your average poor person, cocaine doesn't work long term because meth is cheaper, gives you a bigger high, and the high lasts longer. Most people, for example, who become meth addicts started at cocaine, almost always. I've basically never met a client who was addicted to meth who didn't start at cocaine. Obviously, you can be addicted to cocaine, but it leads you to a worse direction. The issue is that there's a negative incentive, right? If you're doing cocaine, nobody wants to do meth. Meth is broadly viewed as kind of like a dirty drug. People realize that it's super dangerous. It's very strongly associated with homelessness. So most people who are doing meth are kind of like, it's kind of done like in secret in the basement and everyone's kind of ashamed of it. The issue with loot boxing is if you enjoy loot boxing, gambling just makes more sense. If you enjoy the varied ratio of loot boxing, the microtransactions, in the case of loot boxing, you get a pixelated skin for the most part, because most of them are typically cosmetics. In the case of gambling, you always have a chance to walk away with money, at least. There's something tangible. Now, I would argue gambling is worse than loot boxing. Right? Loot boxing isn't all bad because there's some level of fun and cosmetics and blah, 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 blah. Just like buying a ticket, a lottery ticket, or playing the VLTs once or twice isn't necessarily bad because it's just kind of fun and you're like kind of doing it just for the fun of it. The issue is that if you're finding yourself getting pretty hooked on loot boxing, I would argue it is a necessary evolution that you will become an online gambler because it makes more sense. It's the same level of fun and you're getting more tangible goods from it. In fact, you're getting something that you can use for more fun. If you pay $5 and you win $20, you're just going to invest the $15 back into the VLT, right? Whereas if you pay for $5 for a loot box, you can't use your like epic skin to buy another loot box. Loot boxing is a pipeline for addiction and gambling. And the fact, in my view, that Twitch, which is a gaming platform which allows for loot boxing, has also slots, to me feels like Twitch is basically creating a situation where we are pipelining young kids from gaming into slots. Because how do these things not correlate? And now you might say, that seems a little hyperbolic. Maybe you feel like that's a little crazy of a claim to make. No, it's fucking not. I found data that backs me up. Let's go through it, Giga Chad style. Okay, we ready? Thank you. All right. Y'all ready for this? Alrighty. Here is a large-scale survey. Video game loot boxes are linked to problem gambling. What's up?
When are you gonna be done streaming, you think?
I've only been on for like 2.5 hours.
I know, I'm just asking.
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out the gym.
Oh, probably like an hour and a half max.
An hour and a half more.
A meeting? Okay. Bye. You can turn your CSGO skins into real money pretty easy. Yeah, but it's not the same thing as just getting money. Like, it's just not the same. In every way, gambling is just easier. It just makes more sense if you enjoy loot boxing. In recent years, loot boxes have become increasingly common. There's increased concern and problem gambling amongst gamers. A large survey of gamers with an N size of 7,400, based, very good N score. Very good sample size, found evidence for a link between the amount that gamers spend on loot boxes and the severity of their problem gambling. This link was stronger than a link between problem gambling and other in-game buying. Let me start again. This link was stronger than a link between problem gambling and buying other in-game items with real-world money, suggesting that the gambling-like features of loot boxes are specifically responsible for the observed relationship between problem gambling and spending on loot boxes. It is unclear from the study whether the buying of loot box acts as a gateway to problem gambling or whether spending large amounts of money on loot boxes appeals to more problem gamblers. However, in either case, these results suggest that there may be good reason to regulate loot boxes in games. And now you might say, I know you have a study with a sample size of 7,400 people, but that's only one study. You know, maybe there's mixed data somewhere else. Maybe it's not that correlated. You are wrong. First of all, I will give everyone a link to this study. You're welcome. Here you go. Science for everyone. Yay! There you go. Just a reminder, if you're watching this and enjoying it, make sure you hit that like button. Help me do well in the algorithm. All right? Speaking of money, you know what's not addictive? Actually, probably, I don't know. Is it addictive to use subs? Probably not. I'm trying to think. It's not a VR. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. You just get emotes. It's probably not a big dopamine rush. Probably not too addictive. But maybe the science will prove me wrong. Here's another study. 2019. Blah, blah, blah. Previous research has shown links between loot boxes and problem gambling in adult populations. However, thus far, there's no empirical evidence of either the size or existence of a link between loot box spending and problem gambling in adolescents. A large-scale survey of 16 to 18-year-olds with a sample size of over 1,000 children found evidence for such a link. The link between loot box spending and problem gambling among these older adolescents was moderate to large magnitude. It was stronger than relationships previously observed in adults. Qualitative analysis of text data showed that gamers bought loot boxes for a variety of reasons. Several of these motivations were similar to common reasons for engaging in gambling. Overall, these results suggest that loot boxes either cause problem gambling among older adolescents, allowing game companies to profit from adolescents with gambling problems from massive monetary rewards, or both of the above. Possible strategies and regulations are given. Now, if you put this study, just this study alone, into Google Scholar, and you go cited by 273 in 4 years, which is really good, and you find over and over and over and over and over again connections between loot boxing linking to problem gambling. So this either means that they're the exact same behavior or that one behavior stems to the other one. That is what this suggests. It suggests that whatever is causing one to occur is causing the other to occur, and there's increasing evidence that suggests that the loot boxing is leading to later problem gambling. So if you have loot boxing in games for children, you're basically teaching young kids the necessary process. You're creating the neural pathways in developing brains for gambling. This is gaming at its worst. We've always hated gaming companies. We haven't always, actually. We've hated gaming companies increasingly over the years. They give you crappy quality games. They're half the time not even that finished. They pretend like the actual release of the game is actually the beta version when they realize it's full of fucking bugs. They break their staff down. They grind out their staff. They never give them paid breaks. People are having mental breakdowns because they work their staff so hard, and they intentionally, actively target and use gambling techniques to hook people and make as much money from them as possible. And they're doing this to fucking kids. Okay? It's a problem. And the fact that it exists on Twitch at all blows my mind. It is wild to me. There is no excuse in my mind for Twitch to have slots at all, and there is no excuse for gaming companies to have loot boxes in any way, right? If we saw this magnitude of relationship between any other like regulated thing and adult addictive behaviors, do you think that we would allow it, right? This is what they tried to do with violent video games for a long time. They basically freaked out because they thought that violent video games made people violent later on. Turns out the evidence is super strong for that, unless basically they're playing super violent video games below like a certain age threshold, because it's like forming their like schemas for like aggression and violence. But other than like, imagine anything similar, but we don't care about the kids, right? And this is the issue. It seems that you're wrong, Erudite. You're wrong. What do you mean I'm wrong? Better read more studies. Read every one of these studies. Read them. This study found similar evidence for a link between the amount that gamers spent on loot boxes and the severity of their problem gambling. This is a study that replicated the previous one that I was just listing, but also improved upon it. Find me a study that says that loot boxing isn't connected to problem gambling, and I'll find you some qualitative piece of garbage. That's probably the best you're going to have. Who paid for the study? Why would you even argue this? Let's see. International departmental level pumping priming funding from York St. John University Department and Art Design Computer Science. Funders have no role in the study design, data collection, analysis, decision to publish, preparation of the manuscript. They got a university grant for this study. Here, I'll put it up on screen. They will not remove gambling on Twitch. Also expect 18 plus streams on Twitch too. They should. I don't expect to have 18 plus streams on Twitch because Twitch is actively trying to go more family friendly. That's why they like keep pumping money into people like Pokemon and stuff like that. How does it feel to get so brutally dunked on? You should see if you could address this on a big platform to have a bigger reach. This is an important talking point, like with Train or one of the bigger streamers. Yes, clip this. Clip my stream and send it to all the big content creators and ask them to review this because it's a really big fucking problem. It is a pipeline. I believe that if you're a streamer who does gambling on stream, you're part of the problem. And Twitch is part of the problem for doing this as well. Now, I will say that I give a margin of error to everyone. I think if somebody is doing slots on their stream and they just haven't thought about it, or they didn't realize it was that big of a deal, or they didn't realize it could have this much of an impact on people, that shit happens, just correct it. Like I'm not wanting to vilify any individual person, but I am going to say as a company, if Twitch is trying to go child friendly and appealed more to like younger people, including loot boxes and gambling, is insane. Are you addicted to reading studies? I wish I was. Are you kidding me? It's like pulling teeth sometimes to make myself sit down and read studies. I mean, I do. I read like 1 to 2 studies every day, but I hate it. Every day I do it. I don't like doing it. The gambling industry is apparently worth $52 billion in the United States. Good luck fighting that industry. Okay. I'm not trying to take down the entire gambling industry. I'm trying to say that Twitch should get it off their thing if they're worth their salt at all. Does that mean that they will? No. They probably won't because there's so much money in it for them. But let's not pretend like it's a good thing. Ever. Which I don't think anyone is, in fairness. But you can call Twitch out even further on its hypocrisy, which is based. I love calling people out on hypocrisy. All right, let me look. Ah, yes. I have one final thing to cover. I want to get practical, okay? Because a lot of people watching are probably a little bit depressed, and they're also probably wondering how to know if they have issues or anything like that. So, one of the common measures that are going to be used in problem gambling and stuff is this measure. It's called the PGSI, or the Problem Gambling Severity Index. It is created by Ferris J and Win H. This is a Canadian one. In fairness, Canadian researchers are like pretty... Or, oh, just got cut off. Oh, my text Legos isn't restarted. Thank you. Without legislation, I don't know what to do. Okay, there we go. I mean, this isn't on like the individual in and of themselves, other than basically like asking your legislators to legislate it. It's kind of like the tobacco company. Like it just has to be legislated. Because you're right. Like gambling industry isn't going to go anywhere, just like tobacco and alcohol isn't. But we could at least create like certain norms. For example, probably removing all loot boxing games from anything that children can buy, or if you have a game that includes loot boxing mechanisms, that you must be 18 or older to access it, right? That would be one simple thing that you could do to like at least protect kids. Because I'm going to be clear, addiction in kids is a whole other ballgame than addiction in adults, because when you're 12 to like 18 to 25, you're still setting most of your formative neural pathways for habit formation. This is a really important time in your life. And if you are peddling to kids an addictive habit when they are in that window of habit neurodevelopmental formation, that is so dangerous. It's really, really bad. So this is one thing I'm gonna, you can just Google this. I can't give you the link because it's a Chrome extension that's pulling it up. But you just have to look up Problem Gambling Severity Index. So basically, have you thought about it in the last 12 months? So maybe I'll kind of outline this for you. There's the 6 mechanisms of addiction that we need to talk about. All right? We're not quite done, guys. got a little bit more information. All right. Markers of addiction. Typically, number 1 is going to be mood modification. I might have to pull out my notes just to make sure I get them all right. So, one thing that we know, one thing we know that addiction does is it modifies your mood. That's one of the main reasons that people tend to engage in some form of addictive behavior is it makes them feel better, makes them feel happy. So it either will take you from a low mood to a neutral mood, or for some people it takes them from a neutral mood to a happy mood. But there's some element of kind of psychoactive mood modification that occurs with the behavior or the substance. Okay, number 2 is going to be tolerance. This is pretty self-evident. It takes more of the same thing to get you the same level of high. This is why, for example, most people who start gambling, they start with $1, $10, $50 every week, and it slowly escalates over time because it takes bigger losses and bigger wins to make them feel the same high that they felt kind of the first time, for example, that they did it. Okay? Third is withdrawal. So, what is withdrawal? I hate this boomer. But I said Canadian researchers are pretty, and that's all. Canadian researchers are like some of the most GigaChad-based people for creating psychometric properties. They're very good at it. Don't know why, but they are. So, I'm pulling something up. Withdrawal is pretty obvious. This is basically the idea of this is basically the element of if you don't do it for a while, it impacts your mood quite significantly. Okay? In the case of substances, you have a physical withdrawal, but you also typically have that emotional withdrawal as well, where you miss it. So after most people, for example, who've gotten sober from drugs, they will experience a withdrawal period where they experience more or less the opposite symptoms that the drug causes. So for people withdrawing from meth, for example, they typically will experience sleepiness, lethargy, low mood, kind of being very sedate and slow, problems with like staying awake and staying like attentive and whatnot. Whereas if you're withdrawing from heroin, which is a downer, you'll typically experience the opposite effects. So you'll be super agitated, you might get a fever, might have heartburn, you're going to be super highly anxious and have a really hard time like sitting still. Okay? So withdrawal, that's a physical withdrawal. Then after that is typically kind of that psychological withdrawal. So a lot of addicts will report having tons of dreams about use, nightmares about use. They'll constantly and regularly be craving and thinking about it. So this is more of like the psychological withdrawal. This takes longer and it varies for different people. The variance of the withdrawal is going to depend on how long you've been using, how intensely, in part for like what reasons, like what mediums you're using it, whether it's like more of a party addiction or if it's like a mood management, like kind of self-medication reasoning. And then obviously how long you use the substance for. So withdrawal. Next is going to be, so I'm going to put in here, so I'm going to put 4. I'm going to only list 4 because I'm going to lump everything in with this last one, which is problematic use. So this is to some extent that it causes dysfunction in your life. It might cause physical harm. There's an element of essentially unable to stop. And when stops have been attempted, relapse occurred. There we go. Thank you for the subs. When stops have been attempted, relapse occurs. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Just pulling up my notes. Oh, I left out of here cravings. Okay. So I said there was 6. I kind of lumped like cravings is typically its own, and dysfunction of life, and then attempts to stop are the other kind of 3. You would separate them into 3. I like problematic use more, and that's more how it looks in the DSM as well. So if you look at the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, it's the psychology Bible basically of diagnosis. What we basically see is they're going to look at symptoms of withdrawal, tolerance, and problematic use. I like to include mood modification because I think it's usually part of the important etiology of an addiction. In the case of gambling addiction, it typically does all of these. It takes more money. There's often a withdrawal that they'll experience. The main withdrawal that they're going to experience is major craving. So it's going to be much more of the psychological. They're not going to get the physical stuff, but it makes sense. It's not a physical dependency. It's a psychological addiction. But to be clear, when we think about addiction, we just assume it's only physical. There seems to be the case that people become physically addicted to things and psychologically addicted, and they seem to be separate and require different treatments as well. Physical addiction typically requires some level of tapering off of the drug, being sober, and then replacing typically like depressed systems like serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin naturally. So like one of the best ways to treat physical dependence on substances is to increase like exercise and sleep cycles. Psychological addiction is a whole other ballgame to treat. And most people, for example, chronic relapse-prone individuals who are addicted to like a substance have both of them. They'll be sober for 1.5 years and still relapse. All right. Second. My dog thinks she's alone. We're all alone. You're dead. Are you so worried? You're so sad. You're so sad. You're so sad. It's so good to see you. She thought she was alone. All right. Questions. While I still have you all. This is when you stop owning a clock and just live on liver time. I'm serious. They start manufacturing all sorts of diabolical missiles to fire off into your guts. So would like, do you remember which ones? Rudimentary Human says that there's words. Oh, I am like way far behind. Erudite's very smart, but she's not too great at encouraging people to subscribe. You'd think with her background, she would know exactly what to do and say. I'm terrible at chilling because I don't think about it. Okay, questions. While we're waiting for questions, I'm going to kind of keep checking chat. But if you would like to support my stream, I am trying to do less length of streams and more condensed material. So I want to have like actual focus streams a little bit. I'll still probably do like chill streams when I'm just like tired and stuff. But this type of stream where I have like a focus, I've researched it, I've got a bunch of links prepped, is a lot more of my style. I've been enjoying that a little bit more of prepping it as well. I've got 2 video essays like on the prep. One of them is being edited like right now. The other one, I need to film like 2 more scenes. It's almost done, so we're going to have those hot off the press. If you guys want to support me, the best ways that you can do so is by, honestly, the best way you can do so is actually by going onto my Patreon and subscribing there, or donating directly. If you're more interested, though, in the benefits, here are the benefits you can get. If you sub on Twitch, you get access to emotes, and Twitch will be ad-free. Yay. Subs on Twitch are currently 30% off. So September, it's super cheap. So if you watch on YouTube, just so you know, you can always shoot a sub in September. It's cheaper. If you also watch on YouTube, you can always throw Amazon Prime at your favorite Twitch streamer. So I stream on both. If you have a YouTube account that you prefer to watch off of, but you also use Amazon Prime like for purchasing, you get 1 free sub per month, and the subs don't renew. So whatever person you give your sub to with your Amazon Prime, you have to give it every month because Jeff Bezos tries to not let you give away free money. But Prime subs, it's like crack, okay? Another way you can support is by becoming a member. On YouTube, you get access to little puppy videos and some priority responses to your comments. We'll probably do some other stuff in the future, like early release and stuff like that. And finally, I have a Patreon. And we've just revamped my Patreon. It's very exciting. So my Discord is very, very popular. It is a very cool community. We do a shitload of activities. If you ever want to support me, one of the best ways to do that is a Patreon. And we've just opened a Patreon-only section of the Discord. So as I'm like interacting with other communities, sometimes we get new people coming in. And some of my old community members get a little like tired of that, or they want like more like condensed, focused conversation. So if you want like a kind of more of a paid community, a gated community, would you say, go into your Patreon group. In there, you'll see all of the benefits with each of the tiers as well. I'm always in my Discord. I'm now going to be cycling between the Patreon chat and the open chat, so you can always chat with me there. It's a super cool community. Okay, I shilled. I also gained nothing, by the way. All that shilling, and not a single sub, not a single donation. This stream took work, guys, you know? All right. There was a question. I do have a Reddit. It just sucks. And I think there's like one hate poster in there, and that's it. What do I think of 12-step programs? Is there good evidence to support their widespread adoption? 12-step programs are decently good for people. Thank you for the cheer. Is it going to read the TTS? No. Oh, there was no TTS. That's why. It's a poll. Wow. By Brian, thank you. Okay. 12 steps seems to be... Okay. 12 steps is super, super effective for people who have no sober supports in their life at all. So, for example, if somebody comes from a highly addicted family and all of their friends are also addicted, 12-step programs can be really good for them to meet like one sober support network person. Other than that, 12 steps are not very effective. So if you're somebody who has a really sober support system, but you also have an addiction, 12 steps tends to be actually worse for you because there's a lot of relapse in these 12-step programs. And so in that case, typically, I don't recommend 12 steps for people. I recommend like other types of programs. Like there are group therapy and like there's a lot of like free group classes that are not 12-step programs, but are aimed for addiction recovery that I highly recommend. There's a question somewhere up here. If you were on the button with a short stack with mid-suited connectors, would you go all in? I don't know what that means. Thank you. Thanks, Becca. I don't know if it's going to read it out. Lemon character jumping in excitement with his heart beating out of his chest. Nice. Well done. Becca coming through. I found MMA and Tai Chi. Any other questions about gambling addiction? When does legit painkiller use for pain turn into a problem addiction? Also, what gets people through the worst of recovery? Like, why continue? Religion? It seems to be a mixture of things. For a lot of people, they find meaning in... So finding meaning. When you're talking about religion, you're talking about finding meaning. for most people getting through recovery, the biggest thing is finding some sort of meaning on the other side. So like, why are they doing this in the first place? Thank you so much for the sub. Indeed. Creative name. I like that. Creative name. Okay. So a lot of my clients got a lot of meaning from their family and their kids. Like they had hopes to basically see their kids or improve their kids' lives. And that was like the main thing that motivated them through it. For a lot of people, I highly encourage getting some internal sense of motivation. So for some people, religion is that internal sense. Like they feel like God is asking them to do this, something of that effect. That's based if that works for you. Another thing that people often find that works really, really well for them is basically saying like, I need to do this for me. Like, I don't want to be in this life anymore. And they basically like are willing to kind of put in the work, which is a lot of work. Question, is it good to call somebody out on an addictive behavior before it comes worse? I would say it's really good to confront people. You just need to do it really tactfully. So for example, there was a period in my life where somebody close to me was going through a pretty rough time in their life. And I noticed that their substance, specifically their alcohol consumption, was kind of getting out of control a little bit. It was like, basically like 1 bottle of wine to 2 every single day. On weekends, it was more. Basically every evening that I saw them, they were drunk. And they were starting to have like a little bit of impact on their work as well. Like they weren't getting up in the morning as well. So in that case, I chose to confront that individual. You just need to do it like really tactfully. So I was like, hey, how are you doing? I basically started being like, how are you doing? I noticed like, I know you're really struggling recently. And they'll be like, yeah, I am. And I'll be like, yeah, I noticed like, I've noticed that you've been consuming a lot more wine. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you think like leads you to drinking wine? Like what's your motivation? And typically they'll be like, it just makes me feel better. And I'm like, yeah, that's super fair. But it makes me worried about you. And they'll be like, well, what do you mean? And I'll be like, well, if you always rely on a substance to fix your mood, that seems like more of a band-aid than a solution. And then luckily this person trusted me a lot. We're very close. And they were like, you're right. We chatted about it. I hooked them up with an amazing psychotherapist. They did a lot of therapy and they do not struggle with substance issues anymore. And they're very on top of it. They still drink actually to this day. They just have a very healthy relationship with substances and they do not drink when they're sad, which was a big thing for them. But yeah, I think it's worth confronting somebody if you're noticing their behavior, but you need to be doing it with like high amounts of love. Because like I said, if you're wanting somebody to go from pre-contemplative to contemplative, shame and accountability that's not the time to do it typically. Sometimes in pre-contemplative, accountability conversations can work of being like, look, this is how you fucked up people's life and like really putting it in their face. Sometimes that works, but I always prefer the compassion route first. And especially for contemplative people, you have to be highly compassionate in that conversation. Reward the correct behavior. If they're in any way acknowledging that they might have a problem, acknowledge it. Freya, I'm still here. I've heard that knowing the problem is half of the problem. Is half of the solution, I think is how it goes. Is that true? Sort of. Thanks, Corey, for the $20. I appreciate that, buddy. Very well appreciated. Is knowing half the solution? Sort of, but some people spend their entire life trying to figure out what is the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem isn't the solution to the problem, right? So if you figure out the cause of the problem, it doesn't mean that you've solved it. Thank you. So how this could be relevant. Trauma and addiction are BFFs, right? A lot of people who have addiction issues have some sort of history of trauma in their life or major distressors. But in general, mental health and addiction are very overlapped. However, if you have PTSD and an addiction, if we treat just your PTSD symptoms will get better, but the addiction issues don't actually change. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case that even if trauma is what caused you into addiction, you still have to treat the addiction for the addiction itself. Treating the trauma won't make the addiction go away. In fact, the main thing that this is important for like trauma treatment for addiction, is that once somebody has gotten sober, the biggest predictor of relapse is mental health. And so if they have untreated mental health issues, if they get sober, but they don't get help for the mental health issues, they're more likely to relapse. But yeah, these two things seem to be treated separately. I think XQC and Trainwrecks are just giving him money so he can handle the situation because it's getting big and they don't want authorities getting involved. I don't know why they want authorities to get involved though, unless they're involved in some way. I guess like maybe because they do slots, but like it's hard to like blame them for it when like Twitch is allowing it and casinos are legal. Oh gosh, sorry, Sabi. So are specifically loot boxes a major harm to kids in games, or could this extend to other chance-based mechanics commonly employed? The main thing that's probably going to be, I don't know. I'll start by that. I don't know. There's no research into anything outside of loot boxes that I could find. The main things that are going to be addictive and probably kind of gateway is going to be things that use the same gambling mechanics and are tied to money specifically. It's probably this combination that is going to be the most dangerous for kids. Chance mechanics by themselves are kind of addictive. For example, a lot of games will keep you hooked in the video game by doing this sort of varied ratio reinforcer through like free like loot boxes and rewards that you get. So they don't make you pay for it, but they do keep you hooked. So there is some research into how like these types of gaming mechanics that are employed to keep people hooked and playing a game longer, and it makes it more fun, are also causing people to become like addicted to gaming itself. There is some research into that, but I haven't seen any super good data on it. So I can't comment that it's like actually an issue. And it's one of these things of like sometimes boomers and researchers get really spooked of technology. That's why, for example, we used to think that like violent video games made kids violent. Turns out that's not really the case, like I said, unless the kid is playing the violent video games before the age of like 8. Shame should be there if serious harm is done to themselves and the people around them, I think. Ideally, you're going to want guilt. So guilt seems to be motivating. Shame seems to be freezing in general. So like I do want people to feel remorseful. I like the ideal goal, like when I talk to clients and they're like, I just feel so guilty. I'm like, that's a healthy response. That means you're a compassionate person. Guilt is motivating. Typically, when we feel guilty, we're also motivated to correct it. If you're adding shame on top of that, which is typically some element of expectation that is unfair, that's where we see people freeze. So shame seems to cause more freezing behaviors, whereas guilt seems to cause motivated, kind of goal-seeking behaviors. Do you think stuff like Pokemon cards are problematic for children because opening packs is kind of like loot boxes? Well, that's kind of what came up in the video, is to some extent creative. Like these cards are kind of like that. The main difference is typically kids are going to be super regulated because their parents are it's usually their parents buying it for them. Because here's the thing, one scratch card on a lottery ticket isn't a problem. It's when you're doing 15 scratch cards or you get a scratch card every single day. That's when the lottery and the scratch ticket goes from like kind of harmless fun to a problem. Same with, to be honest, this is why I want to say like loot boxes are bad because of how they're getting used, but they're also the same as anything else. It's like weed's not bad. It's just bad if somebody becomes addicted. Alcohol's not bad. It's just bad if people become addicted to it. Well, alcohol is kind of always a little bit bad because it's like really harmful for your body, but not bad in the same way. I'm missing the flower in my hair for my cosplay? Question mark? All right. Any other questions about loot boxing? All right. Final way you guys can help. Take clips of this stream and send it to people. I want people to see this. I want to talk to people about this. I think this is bigger than Slicker. And I've been planning to do a stream on loot boxing for a while, which is why I had a lot of this already kind of pre-prepped. But this is a bigger conversation than just Slicker. And unfortunately, it's only when like a big drama happens that people care about these things, but these things matter. How can we as a society teach others to recognize and navigate the predatory weaponized tactics? I mean, the same way that we kind of teach society about like the dangers of nicotine or the dangers of drinking or anything else. It's like education, talking about it, and like kind of encouraging like more widespread, voting with your dollar. So like where you can, try to like put your money towards video game companies who like don't do super nasty things. It's the same reason like you can buy from Walmart, but if you can afford it, like try to buy local. That kind of shit. There's a lot of weird questions coming in. I find it weird that we had the XQC drama yesterday and now we have Slicker's drama going on today. That can't be a coincidence. Hard to say. It could be a coincidence. You should call Hassan out. I mean, the issue is he's like pretty insulated. He'd never talk to me. So if he wants to talk to me about addiction, I'd love to. And basically be like, hey, this is where you're like super off and you should be careful when you speak authoritatively about subjects you don't know anything about. But it's all subjective. Okay. Is there anything else you guys want to do? Or should I just go to the gym now? Because I don't have anything else planned. I'm willing to take questions from anyone, but maybe I'll check my Discord, see if there's any messages in there. May I ask your credentials? Sure. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I am a psychometrist and a psychometrician, so I've done both training in delivering psychological assessments like an IQ test. I've also worked for the government in developing a measure. Specifically, I worked on a measure that's used internally by the government of Alberta that measures technology addiction in children. Not children, in teens. So I'm a psychometrician, a psychometrist, a licensed addictions counselor, and I have a honors psych in psych, a Bachelor of Arts honors degree in psychology. I will be going for my master's hopefully in the fall, like next fall. Yeah. IRL stream at the gym. I don't have any data, so I couldn't do that. Does your practice ever weigh on you personally? Yes. But it's very important to know how to like let go. Yeah. Does your practice ever weigh on? Yeah. That's a lot of school. True. And I'm buckling up for like another 8 years. Did you write your personal statement for masters? Like for my application? Yes, I did write it already. Well, I've written one. I'm going to write a couple because I'm going to apply to like 3 schools this year because the GRE finally got dropped at clinical psych programs. So I can apply to like all sorts of clinical psych programs now too. Because I refuse to apply to schools that require the GRE because it's unempirical. Do you know anything about dreams and how they relate to your psyche? Dreams are basically understood to be probably a combination of consolidating memories from the day. So that's why, like, if you like watched a movie about a lighthouse, there's a high probability that you'll have a dream that includes a lighthouse. But also like things that come up throughout the day. So if you have like a lot of feelings or a lot of like reflective emotions about certain things, you might have your dream kind of become laden with that. So like, dream analysis, I think, should be taken like very lightly. If it seems meaningful to you, the part that matters to me most is why it's meaningful to you, right? So if you have a dream about like a teacup, I'm not going to say like the teacup means this, but I am going to say, if you think, I think the teacup means this, I want to know why you feel that way, basically. Does gambling affect men more than women? And also it feels like, does age matter? Generally, any form of addiction disproportionately impacts men. I don't know about gambling, but I'm going to bet $10 right now with you, chicken, that gambling, well, you don't owe me $10, but I'm going to bet $10 that gambling impacts men more often. Age-wise, I would suspect we're going to see spikes of addiction around the same, of like gambling around the same ages where we see spikes of like emotional distress. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a pretty big spike between like 16 to 25, which is where young men tend to be much more impulsive. They also typically experience high rates of suicidality and mental health at these ages. And then I would jump again to like retired men. So oh my gosh. I'm sorry that your place is on fire. So probably also like older retired men. I'm likely to see it there. Like veterans and anyone who's like retired and a man. I would expect to see spikes in that age range as well, but this is my speculation. I don't actually know. Up to 3. Got him, Serge. Got him. Is it worth trying psilocybin for CPTSD? So CPTSD is not an actual diagnosis. It is a talked about concept. In general, for trauma treatment, there's been really high effect sizes coming out of PTSD treatment with combined hallucinogens. So make sure that you're doing that with a therapist because there's typically a therapeutic technique attached to the drug emittance. But yeah, definitely seems to be pretty effective. Wearing a choker but no OnlyFans? Sad. Yeah, imagine I could wear clothing and also not do OnlyFans. I also am wearing a black leather dress and I don't. I also have black hair and don't do OnlyFans. I also wear makeup and don't do OnlyFans. It's crazy. It's really crazy. My friend won $183 million from a Powerball lottery. Did it destroy his life? Because most lottery winners, even when they win, it like ruins their life because they don't budget for like long term. So they like blow all their money in the first like 5 years and then they can't afford anything. I'd be curious to know. Walney's Blanc, I would like you to ask yourself first, why are you asking me that question? How do I become a member for the YouTube channel? If you go to my channel, if you click my name, you'll see like the page that has my banner and the image profile. Along at the top, just under the banner on the right, it says community, I believe. In community is where you can become a member, and there's multiple tiers. Isn't the lottery winners' lies a myth being debunked? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I definitely don't research lottery winners. One study says, but despite deterministic adage that says winning the lottery will ruin your life, a recent study shows that winning big cash prizes often leads to big increases in life satisfaction over the long term. That's not really answering our question. Life satisfaction doesn't mean life being ruined. I guess like it's heuristically related. Let's keep searching with Bing. I don't know why. I need to figure this out again. Yeah, it looks like the myth of doom lottery winner cursed to a life of misery after coming to windfall is well known, but not to worry, it's not actually that true. Great. We learned something new today. Yeah, it's not as bad as people think. Okay. Did you know it's September and subs are up to 30% off? That is true. It is September. Subs are 30% off, which means that is true. That's true. Look, I have tried shilling, okay? I'm not good at it, and I have not created a culture of giving money. And I don't know how to do it. And it seems like the main way people do it is either they create a culture of giving money, which I don't know how to do because I'm uncomfortable asking for money, or you kind of like whine and you like beg for money a little bit. And I don't want to do that either. I suppose I could try to joke about it, like being like, hey guys, like, look, these armpits, they're not free, okay? If you want to support this armpit stream, make sure to donate money. You know, you probably give $3,000 to $4,000 a minimum a year on OnlyFans, you know? But how many OnlyFans girls have armpits quite like these? Probably most of them. But do any of them promote that they have armpits? Probably not, because it's kind of weird. And I've fully leaned into it. It's actually, the armpit lore is at the point where people unironically think that I think that armpits are sexy, and I'm intentionally flashing my armpits to be really sexual. Which is kind of fun. I don't actually mind it. It's a vibe, you know? 3 to 4K on OnlyFans? I don't know, Joe. I don't know how much people spend on OnlyFans. How much do you spend on OnlyFans? Is it more? Is it less? I don't know what your reaction means. You seem aghast, but I don't know if that means that 3 to 4K is lowballing it or highballing it. You would never run out if you hit 1 billion. That is true. Thank you for all the gifted subs, guys. Dot indeed. Unfun Gaming gave out 5 community subs. Look at, you're saving so many people. Poor Sid Machinery is still has no sub. Still has to watch dirty little ads. I literally gave all my money to OnlyFans girls. You could say it's an addiction in and of itself. Really? Isn't there like a whole fetish as well? Like called findom? Where it's like it's being dominated. Typically, it's often by a woman, but it's basically like giving somebody full like financial control and of your like bank account. I had a friend who was like super into that. Was like kind of addicted and it was ruining his life. Then surprisingly, the only people who are willing to basically be like, sure, I'll take advantage of all of your money, were also not very considerate of his money. It seems like people sub and gift more when you're chilling or talking directly to stream. Interesting. That is true. That's true. It's kind of weird though. Wouldn't you prefer that I just do like actual like educational comment, not just like me being like blah 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 blah. All right, I need to let the dog out because she's gonna keep screaming. Would I sell my feet pictures? Probably not. I'd sell my husband's feet pictures though. Ah, Giga Chad. No. Why do they say that? I don't know. Where did I mute the sneeze? You guys have somehow sexualized my armpits. Of course I'm muting my sneeze, okay? Absolutely. I used to wear leather as well, but it's kind of expensive. Well, this is fake leather, so it is cheap. What if 10 gifted subs get somebody What if 10 gifted subs got someone a 15-minute session on stream? Like a therapy session? I can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. Make me uncomfortable. Sneeze fetish is on the rise. That's true. The answer is the earth is flat and they lied to us to hide God. True. What do you mean somehow it's armpits? Somehow it's an armpits are big in Japan. Well, I need to clearly get more Japanese viewers if armpits are so in Japan because apparently I have stellar armpits. Is there a left-wing bias in psychology? Absolutely. There's a left-wing bias in almost all of academia. And we've been aware of it for a really long time. It just doesn't really typically offset, like, ever. Because generally people who are high in openness to experience are much more likely to become liberal, and people who are high in openness to experience also tend to want to become university professors. So, yeah, we kind of have like a self-selecting problem. The problem is that we've now got a whole bunch of personalities that have just convinced the world that they're right. Uh-oh. Lube, armpits, hard on. I gotta try that. Better find a girlfriend ASAP. True. It's nice for the winter. Okay. Why don't you have a hype train activated? I don't know. Why don't you guys have a hype train activated? Get that shit on. Let's go. Look at 10 members from Twitch already. Oh, hold on. And 0 members on YouTube. Not 1 member on YouTube. YouTube, you let me down today. There's more of you. Let's see. Oh no, there's less of you right now. There's a lot of like weird sexual questions people are asking me that I'm just gonna keep ignoring. Ring him. If you're watching on YouTube, just know Twitch is fucking rolling you right now. They're mocking you. They're saying big losers don't know how to make content. Big losers don't know how to be a subscriber. Indeed. Big losers cannot sub or member themselves. That's what Twitch chat is saying to YouTube. YouTube isn't even liking my stream. Cringe. Oh, there we go. Simon Gottborg has become a member. Well done, Simon. Welcome to the peasant goblin lifestyle. Hey, the memberships on YouTube are cheaper than on Twitch. Yeah, I made like a $2 level or something like that. YouTube is great, but I genuinely think you were nice. So, life was created. My speed 2 times playback just caught up, and now you sound high because I'm talking so slow. That's impressive that you watched me on 2 times. I can talk very quickly sometimes. I guess I haven't been talking that quickly, though. YouTube has twice as many likes as viewers. We're a small but mighty few. Yeah, I think we've had a really high rotating number of people on the YouTube. Probably now that my title is something about Slicker, people are checking in and they're just like watching me like blab. And they're like, I don't care. What's your favorite non-English word? I don't know. What kind of question is, what's yours? Who even has that answer? Tomo arigato, Mr. Roboto. That's my favorite. Do you think the left-wing bias also exists in countries like China? Probably, but I think their government kind of oversees reducing that artificially. Huh? How do you do it? How do you do it? What's my go-to sleep position? I can only sleep in one position because of my neck. No pillow, flat on my back. It's the only way I can sleep. Or it fucks me up. Ms. Kiff, been using Slicker for YouTube, so you should be proud. And so should you, and be proud of it. I don't know. It's a weird thing, right? You can't do streaming without, to some extent, using people for content. But it feels weird to use people for content. Thank you for becoming members. We've got Kevin Taheda? Kevin? I don't know if you guys want me to say your name. Kevin and Kevin. 2 Kevins. Wow. All right, exciting. And Steal Your Face has also subscribed. Thank you, Steal Your Face. You may not, though. No pillow, unsubbed. Yeah, it's so painful. I can't have any pillow at all. I've never found a pillow that works. Trust me. We have so many very fancy pillows. Cervical pillows, every other, I don't know. There's a bunch of other weird names for all the pillows that Nick has bought to try to be like, maybe this pillow. And it's like, it's just better if I'm not on a pillow. I don't know. Ever since I injured my neck really badly, I just can't use pillows at all. The like rotation forward really fucks with me. I don't know why. Also, if my neck goes like this, like looking up, also really, really fucks with my neck. I can feel it like grinding in here when I do that. Dot. Thank you for the sub. Who do we have to thank? Oh, we have gifted subs. Oh my goodness. Joe 10, thank you for the gifted sub. To Red Penny. Wow, you gifted a sub to my head mod. Very impressive. Really wish I could do that. What was the issue? With my neck? The issue is that I deviated between like C1 and C2. I almost broke my neck in a horse riding accident. Do you like the general message of work ethic, personal accountability, independent critical thought, and overcoming adversity that Andrew Tate gives? I don't like his idea of independent critical thought because I think he actually engages in really bad thinking. I shouldn't say engages in bad thinking. He's clearly brilliant because he's been very effective at everything he's done, but he LARPs like he's bad at thinking, right? Like the debate he had with Hassan was like really cringe, where he's just like, dismiss all of science. And it's like, that's not a good plan. Work ethic, for the most part, yeah. I think our society is fully good at work ethic. I guess like young generations are kind of getting shitty at it. So yeah, I have no problem with work ethic. I just think sometimes we kind of make like a god out of work ethic when there's more to life than just working. What are the other ones you listed? Overcoming adversity. I think that's great. I think that's a very good one. And personal accountability as well is also great. I don't feel him like living out that value as much. But yeah. Thoughts on She-Hulk? Never watched it. There's some pretty good memes that come from it. It looked cringeworthy. I felt anger when I saw it. Tate's only benefit is that he's a conversation starter, kind of like having an ugly coffee table. Damn. Maya Maxwell, Jeff Meisenstein, King, Maya Maxwell. Shout out. Shout out. All right. I'm going to go to the gym, guys. All right. On Twitch, you guys are going to go to... Where do you want to go? Dylan Burns, IRI. Maybe I should see if Ms. Kiff's on and raid over there. That would be kind of funny. Let's see. Who is on? Is Ms. Kiff on? No. Where would be funny to go? Where do you guys want to go? Oh, Wicked Supreme's on. Do you guys want to go to Wicked? Sneeko? Okay, we could do Sneeko on YouTube. I don't know if he's enabled it. YouTube is trickier. I can only raid people who have enabled it on their side for me to raid them. Weird question. Do men find freckles more attractive the same way men are supposed to find red lipstick attractive due to biological reasons? I can't think of any reason that freckles would be more attractive for any biological reason, even at a theoretical level. So, yeah. Raid the Daliban? Yeah, go to the Daliban. I don't know if Destiny even has me set up on YouTube, but... All right. Twitch. Where do you want to go? Wicked Supreme. Okay. Weird question. Yeah, okay. That stream, have a good one. I know Kefos is online. That's true. Raid. And I'm going to put Wicked Supreme. And here, we're going to go customization, redirect, add, search. Nice, I can send to Destiny. Off you go. Off you go. Goodbye, baby cugs, big kisses. Join me in the Discord. Bye.